Guanxi fell silent for a moment before admitting that if it were not for Nangya, it might not have come to this. Everything Nangya offers is free, he said, and their service runs far better than anything the three of them provide. Even he would choose the Nangya Foundation first if a crisis found him, he said, and there is simply no harm in the world until somebody sets a comparison beside you. Seo Yanseng frowned and asked what Nangya was thinking, whether they genuinely intended never to make money, and whether the whole thing was a total loss run purely for publicity. Guanxi gave a bitter smile and told her a loss was exactly what it was not, because the Nangya Merchant Guild's reputation now stood at its absolute peak, and its word of mouth ran better than the three great merchant guilds put together. The profits of their branches on the major islands were shrinking almost by the day, he said, and more than 70% of cultivators now went to Nangya first when they bought cultivation resources, and all Nangya had paid for that was 1% of the guild's book income. Once those words were out, both Deng Qian and Seo Yanseng went quiet. The Northern Dark Holy Land keeps a close relationship with the Nangya Merchant Guild, which makes these hundreds of millions of miles of sea Nangya's home ground. They originally held nearly 90% of the business across the entire sea area. Only the scraps left over were ever divided among the other powers, and even those scraps were enough for everybody to eat their fill. Then the three great merchant guilds united a few years ago, entered the North Sea, grew steadily, began every kind of commercial competition they could think of, and they forcibly took a great deal of business away from Nangya. The situation shifted from Nangya's sole dominance into a two-sided confrontation that settled into a stalemate, and that outcome left the people of the three great merchant guilds in very high spirits. Being able to carve meat off an opponent's body on that opponent's own ground is not something an ordinary man manages. Then came the events of these last few weeks, with the Nangya Young Lord launching one Ascendance Assembly after another and establishing a charity foundation. The reputation of the Nangya Merchant Guild has gone straight up. In the Cheongan Archipelago, the Starfall Archipelago, and a great many of the large inner islands, nearly every market has returned to Nangya's hands, and the effect is still fermenting and expanding outward. Anybody can see that if it is allowed to run, the territory the three of them worked so hard to conquer in the North Sea gets pulled up by the roots before long. And the price Nangya paid for that was 1% of its profits. Thinking it through, every one of them broke out in a cold sweat. "What a brilliant strategy," one of them said. And Guanxi's expression turned grave as he admitted they had underestimated that Nangya young lord. "The man is extremely good at working human nature," he said. "He appears to be giving money away and spending it like water, while he is actually putting down a tiny stake for an enormous return." Seo Yanseng's breathing came faster, and her chest rose as she asked whether this could really be the method of the legendary playboy. All three of them were battle-hardened veterans of the business world, and none of them had expected that after uniting this time they would be beaten this badly by one young man. Could a man like that genuinely be a playboy, and whose family produces a playboy this capable? "In my opinion," Deng Qian said coldly, "he might not be that strong." He admitted the failure came from underestimating Wang Mok, and then said the root cause ran deeper, because the boy's previous image as an incompetent playboy was rooted too firmly in all their heads. "That image is why none of them held any defense or any respect for him from the beginning," he said, "and that is what produced this loss. To put it plainly, all three of them had been careless. If they had treated him as a capable opponent from the first day, they would never have been beaten this easily." Hearing that, Seo Yanseng and Guanxi looked at each other and nodded. Looking back, in fact, are Wang Mok's actions genuinely hard to predict? Not necessarily when you look at it honestly. If the man playing against them from a distance had been an old fox with decades of fame in the business world, they would never have let their vigilance drop. They could have done better across a great many details. "Pretending to be a pig in order to eat the tiger is genuinely useful," Deng Qian said, and admitted he had been fooled by it. Then he stood slowly, his eyes cold, and crushed the teacup in his hand. "The same trick works once at most," he told the empty room. "Wang Mok, I will eventually make you understand that no matter how deep you hide yourself, you will never be my match." Down by the seaside, walking through the afterglow of the sunset, I sneezed. Who exactly is talking behind my back this time? Siep Zhongjong told me the wind off the sea was strong and asked me to put on another layer. She was still wearing that fiery red robe cut close to the body, and she carried a mink cloak and draped it carefully across my shoulders. The two of us stood very close, and the faint scent of her drifted past me, and I narrowed my eyes and said her name. She made a small confused sound at that. "Do you know," I asked her, "what the crime is for bumping into the young lord?" She was stunned and protested that she had done no such thing. I looked her in the eye and told her with complete certainty that she absolutely had. She looked down, understood, and 2 spots of color floated onto her cheeks. She pressed a hand quickly to her chest, took 2 steps back, and said in a wounded tone that she had not expected me to be that sort of person. That surprised me, and I asked her what she meant by not expected. "Is my reputation among you people genuinely that good?" She made a small strangled noise and said nothing at all. I laughed twice at that and kept walking along the shore. Seo Jongjong watched my back with something complicated moving through her eyes. It was exactly as Im Pyongsang had told her it would be. The young lord was not remotely as simple as he looked on the surface. With a single move, the foundation he had recovered an enormous share of the business the three great merchant guilds had taken. These past days, when the revenue reports from the major islands came across her desk, she had been stunned by them. To counter the invasion of the three great merchant guilds, the senior people at Nanya had made countless efforts and attempts across the years, and none of it worked. In business tactics, the four great merchant guilds are all much the same. In financial power, the three of them combined far exceed Nanya alone. If Nanya were not sitting inside North Sea territory with the northern Dark Holy Land behind it, the situation would have been considerably worse. And the young lord, after drafting the implementation plan for the foundation and settling a few details, had never asked about it again. Even when the three great merchant guilds joined forces to build a second foundation, there was not a trace of tension on his face. He had casually sent them 10,000 spirit stones on top of it. He did not appear worried in the slightest that they would ruin his plan. In the end, that was precisely how the whole thing went. Nanya did nothing at all and had already won enormously. Although the Bongne Cloud Sea Foundation had not formally disbanded, it existed in name only, and it was basically impossible that anybody would ever donate to it again. For some reason, looking at the figure standing against the sea and giving off a golden glow in the twilight, something surfaced in her. Seop Jongjong found herself thinking of the peerless masters hidden from the world that she used to read about in novels. I only use one move, and if you can strike back, then you win. Walking along the coast, a series of system prompts ran across my mind one after another. I had received a cultivation return from Wang Chonsong, which pushed my withered origin art experience up and added a point of mana. I had received one from Ju Mokion, which lifted my Raging Thunder Charm experience and my Lightning Mastery. I had received one from Oho, which improved my Profound Feminine Pill Refinement and my Alchemy Technique. Then more of them arrived, stacked one on the next. Under the strict requirements I set, every scrap of aid and consumption the Foundation provided was free, and the disaster-stricken cultivators did not pay so much as half a spirit stone. That was because I worried that if money changed hands, it might affect the system's judgment and get the whole thing ruled as something other than an investment. The results of that decision were already showing. After every sea monster invasion, the number of surviving cultivators can fairly be described as 1 in 10, which leaves their numbers far below what they were before. Because of that, though, the difficulty of my investments dropped enormously. The system decides investment difficulty by assessing a person's cultivation, wealth, circumstances, and potential together, which means the more miserable their lives, the more painful their circumstances. The less they have left, the easier it becomes for me to invest and buy at the bottom. The cultivators who had suffered through the disaster fit every one of those conditions. Take what time as the example. Among the cultivators who survived on the Starfall Archipelago, there were several Nascent Soul Sovereigns, and almost none of the rest sat at Chi Refining or below, since most were at least at Foundation establishment. For cultivators carrying that much strength, the potential still left unspent is not necessarily large, and buying in at the original price would not have profited me. After a disaster, though, they come discounted, which makes it far easier to max out the investment progress and makes them well worth considering. On top of that, anybody who survives a sea monster invasion where the survival rate is 1 in 10 either has luck of an incredibly tough grade or means and strength well beyond the ordinary. Either way, the odds that they bring me a higher return after investment go up with them. With that many layers stacked together, I have essentially maxed out the cost effectiveness of the whole operation. Great things achieved on very little money at all. Then a roar went off somewhere inside my body. My mana came up like a tide, surging and passionate, oscillating through me and throwing off faint-colored light. Those lights grew brighter until they were close to bursting straight out of my skin. Then the blood-red jade pendant hanging at my neck, the void restriction, gave off a small glow and completely suppressed the phenomenon that had been about to arrive. I felt the power inside me settle back into quiet, and found myself getting emotional about it. My system is good in very nearly every possible way. The only trouble is that because every scrap of my cultivation arrives as returned gains, I never cultivate anything myself, and therefore never build a bottleneck. Every breakthrough happens without warning, as natural as water finding a channel, and sometimes I break through in my sleep. If I fail to react in time, my aura leaks out and other people notice. Case in point, and it happened exactly like that. I was still standing on the waves by the shore when I broke through to Foundation Establishment Peak and could already start preparing to form a core. I must keep the fact that I can cultivate hidden for as long as possible, I thought. The more unknown cards I hold, the better my odds of catching an enemy completely off guard. Not being able to cultivate is an excellent coat of protective color. In a world like this one, no matter what sort of opponent stands across from me, that single fact makes them look down on me. At a critical moment, it is exactly the card that turns a defeat into a victory. The reason my cultivation climbed this fast, beyond the returns from the invested cultivators in the disaster area, lay somewhere else. On those 100-odd islands I circled on the sea chart last time, the Ascendance Assembly had already been held with a great deal of fanfare. Manhwa is genuinely reliable when it comes to work. On the third day after my last order, the Ascendance Assembly project team was already standing. Besides the original core members of the Li Ryang royal family, a large number of outside personnel were recruited, and all of them were native cultivators from Cheongjul Island. There was a very simple reason behind that choice. Cheongjul Island counts as my base of operations, and my prestige there runs higher than anywhere else. Whether they were loose cultivators or sect cultivators, they were all grateful to me. The moment they heard they could help the young lord of the Wang family, they flocked in like lunatics. A great many of them shouted that they wanted no wages at all and only wanted to repay a kindness. They could shout as much as they liked, and I still had to pay them. Wages had to be given, and they had to be high, at least 30% above what comparable work paid elsewhere. On my suggestion, Li Wanhua also built a promotion path so that the employees at the bottom of the project team had a stable route upward. For every 10 or more islands worth of Ascendance Assembly preparation a person took part in, they could become a squad leader running a 10-person squad. For every 100 or more islands, they could rise to captain running 10 squads, and so on up the ladder. Money to take, a future to look at, and work done for their benefactor. 3 layers of buffs stacked on one man, and there was no danger any of them would slack. Although the spiritual chi on those peripheral islands runs thinner and the odds of a spiritual root being born there are lower, the sheer quantity of islands makes up the difference. Once everyone is genuinely tested, there will not necessarily be many fewer cultivators than the inner islands produce. The task I set was to complete the Ascendance Assembly work on those 100-odd islands inside 7 days, then use them as a center and keep expanding outward. The goal for the next round is over 1,200 peripheral small islands. At the same time, the number of Nanya Foundation branches has to accelerate its own expansion. I want at least one branch every few thousand miles of sea, and 3 or 5 of them in any area where cultivators run dense. The Foundation and the Ascendance Assembly both stand for reputation, and wherever they open, they give the Nanya Merchant Guild's business in that region a positive push and raise the profits considerably. That extra money then goes straight into the next round of investment, which forms a cycle that feeds itself. I no longer live in the Li Ryang Royal Palace on Cheongjul Island because it is not right to occupy another man's palace forever. The Foundation headquarters is finished now. The floor area is not extensive, and in sheer luxury it leaves the palace far behind. After I mentioned that I intended to stay there permanently, my mother, Na Hyun-sung, immediately ordered people to lay several sets of grand arrays around the Foundation capable of holding off Earth immortal-level powers. Quietly stationed a large number of experts to guard it, several of whom sit at the soul transformation stage on their own. Li Wanhua, on hearing about it, first covered his face and wept over how reluctant he was to part with me, then tore down the entire royal city and rebuilt it, wrapping the Foundation inside a half-circle. The whole royal city had become a barrier standing guard around the Foundation's edge. As for Li Wanhua's own residence, he put it on that city wall, where he threw together a simple house and announced that he wanted to guard the gate for the young lord. Back at the headquarters, I sat at my desk, picked up my brush and wrote quickly. "The Ascendance Assembly needs no more worry from me," I wrote. "All it lacks is time, and at the current rate the entire North Sea island chain can be covered inside 3 months at most. Beyond the North Sea, a man leaves the sphere of the Northern Dark Holy Land. Wanting things to run as smoothly as they run now will be difficult, so a more rigorous plan is needed. And beyond the lowest cost mortal investments, investment in some low-level cultivators should go on the agenda as well." Seop Jongjong saw me thinking and quietly withdrew from the room. A few days later, somewhere out in the North Sea, an enormous whirlpool opened. The sky shook and the earth moved with it. The waves went wild, and the void realm cracked as though another world were about to tear itself free of the endless seabed. The surface of the sea out there was pure chaos. Massive pitch-black shadows rose off the seabed, one after another like malevolent flood dragons, bearing fangs and brandishing claws in the void realm, and giving off an aura nobody could have imagined. Those countless dragon shadows merged into 9 of them, so vast they ran hundreds of feet long, and they broke the surface and lifted waves hundreds of feet high as they climbed. Countless water mists rushed toward the highest reaches of the sky and formed terrifying tornadoes and waterfalls, and the sound of it rumbled like thunder across a scene nobody could look away from. The 9 dragon shadows left the sea with their massive bodies stretched out like thick black ropes, and the far end of each body was connected to an enormous island. Then, the island itself broke the surface. Incalculable quantities of seawater poured off it, displacing air and bringing a whistling gale with it. Could this be the legendary tomb of the black-scaled dragon lord? One cultivator said, staring at the 9 dragon shadows hauling that island, his pupils shrinking as some old story came back to him. Could it be the black-scaled dragon lord who ruled this sea area 700 years ago? It is exactly him, somebody else answered. This is a great monster, another said. It is said he threw the mortal world into chaos back then and was killed here by a soul transformation powerhouse of our human race. Every 100 or 200 years his lair comes up into the world. His life's collection is inside, and there is even a legacy left behind. A monster race legacy is of average value to human race cultivators, somebody else said, and this great monster killed countless human race powerhouses in his life, so there must be many treasures. On top of that, the Flood Dragon clan is as greedy as the pure-blooded Dragon clan and loves to collect every sort of treasure. If a man could only get inside. Amid the talk, a great many cultivators went red around the eyes. Looking at the island where the restrictions had not yet dissipated, their breathing went rapid, and they wished they could rush in immediately and strip the place bare. It was not a soul transformation great monster, Manhwa said. He was standing at the highest point of the sky, looking down at the scene below, and he introduced it respectfully. That vile dragon's cultivation before death only reached the peak of the 9th transformation of the nascent soul stage, he said. It was purely because his bloodline power was startling, because he had obtained a miraculous technique, because the monster race's physical body runs powerful, that he had the strength to fight a human race cultivator at the early soul transformation stage. So this is a ruin left by a peak nascent soul, I said, leaning back against the golden lion. Or a half-step soul transformation flood dragon. Exactly, Manhwa said, nodding, and he added that the ruin was not appearing for the first time. In 700 years it has come up twice already, he said, and this is the third. I tilted my head and asked whether that meant there was nothing valuable left inside. Manhwa smiled flatteringly and said that to me, young lord, that vile dragon's entire net worth while alive would be beneath mention, let alone what remains now. However, he said, for the cultivators down below, if they can get in they might genuinely find some fortune. I nodded, thinking that was fair enough as it stood. In this world there are honestly not many ruins or secret realms worth my attention. Even for an ordinary earth immortal, unless something unusual is inside, they would not qualify and the contents might not be worth as much as the birthday presents I have collected over the years. It would need to be a ruin of the 12th tribulation or above at minimum, or the ruin of a quasi-emperor or a great emperor. And a ruin at that level, the moment it surfaced, would shake heaven and earth and set the entire Changwon realm trembling, which would put it just as far outside my reach, since the top powers of the family would have to move on it. Then something occurred to me and I rubbed my chin and asked how much he knew about the situation inside this particular secret realm. Manhwa answered seriously that when the place appeared the first 2 times, juniors from his Lee family went in, so they knew the layout quite well. Then he caught up with himself and asked, with real curiosity, whether the young lord wanted to go in and play, and offered to arrange for people to clear the area immediately. My lips twitched slightly at that. Come back, I told him, and asked what area he thought he was clearing. I have another matter for you to handle. Out on the sea, the phenomena kept right on running. A peak nascent soul flood dragon powerhouse is not something to underestimate. Even after several hundred years dead, the restriction on this ruin held strong and firmly blocked the restless cultivators outside it. Looking at this, one of them said it will take at least another 2 or 3 days for the restriction to dissipate completely. Anybody who tries to force his way in right now, another said, is walking into a dead end. Off in a corner of the crowd, a youth in black wearing a hood stayed silent. He asked his teacher whether this flood dragon, dead 700 years now, can its essence blood still be found anywhere in there. It is worth trying your luck, an aged voice said inside his mind. The Azure Heaven Dragon transformation art in your hands is powerful. If you can refine the essence blood of an Ascent Soul Stage Flood Dragon far enough to reach the initial level, it will completely compensate for the deficiencies in your physical body. It will be of enormous benefit to your future cultivation besides. Dan Hyun's voice carried some emotion in it, because this disciple of his genuinely does have startling luck. Not long ago, Im Yon happened across a battle where sea monsters were invading a human race island, and he went forward to help and was unfortunately targeted by a monster race powerhouse. Heavily injured, he sank to the seabed, and then by a stroke of luck, a spatial rift swallowed him and dropped him into the remnant domain of an ancient Dragon Clan powerhouse. There he obtained a divine ability with enormous potential and even more terrifying power. After leaving that domain, he had been lamenting the catch in it. The ability was strong, and a human who wanted to cultivate it had to be assisted by the essence blood of a Dragon Clan or Flood Dragon Clan powerhouse. And then he walked directly into the emergence of a Flood Dragon Clan powerhouse's tomb. What an absurd coincidence that is. Understood, Im Yon said, pursing his lips, determination arriving in his eyes. At his current cultivation, using the power of the sea spirit flame to refine Nascent Soul Stage Flood Dragon Essence Blood was already his absolute limit, and it was still the best option available. Since he had encountered it, he had to try regardless. The Secret Realm's restriction needs a few more days to dissipate completely, Dan Hyun told him, so rest where you are and conserve your energy. Im Yun agreed to do exactly that. Just as he finished speaking, a violent noise went off overhead. Everyone looked up and saw a powerful old man in black robes pointing into the air. A ripple opened in the Void Realm, spread rapidly, and struck the restriction. The island shook, and the restriction shattered with a bang and turned into a sky full of light rain that fell across the surface of the sea. For a moment, everything around them went deathly silent. An expert had actually acted, forcibly crushing the restriction under absolute and overwhelming power. To break a restriction left by the black-scaled Dragon Lord that easily, one of them said, the senior who acted has to be a soul transformation stage expert. Nonsense, said another, because besides an existence of that rank, who else could manage it? Every cultivator there wore a complicated expression, looking up at that figure with awe and unwillingness mixed together. If an expert of that level had moved, then did this ruin still have anything at all to do with them? Then, in the next moment, a voice arrived clearly in every one of their ears. By order of my Wang family's young lord, it said, I have opened the way in advance for all you young talents. I hope every one of you gains something, lives up to this trip, and returns in triumph. The voice drowned out the wind and the waves on the sea. Every cultivator there fell into dead silence in an instant, disbelief surfacing on their faces. Wait, what? Such a thing genuinely exists? How is anybody on Earth supposed to believe that? The Wang family young lord, one of them said. Is that the Nanya young lord from the Nanya Foundation? So it is him after all, said another. I have heard of him, and he is the greatest philanthropist in the northern region, recognized as such by all 4 great merchant guilds. He was the one who organized the Ascendance Assembly. But I heard he is the northern region's #1 playboy, somebody objected, doing all sorts of evil. That is ancient history, another said. The grand disciple of the master of the cousin of one of my senior brothers once received a favor from the Nanya Foundation. He says the Wang family young lord is the most benevolent philanthropist under the heavens. No wonder, said somebody else. This sounds exactly like something he would do. The cultivators snapped out of it, all of them excited, their faces filled with gratitude. Having a soul transformation stage expert clear the way for a crowd of cultivators who mostly sat at Chi Refining or Foundation establishment is a ridiculous thing. Dreaming about it would feel like shaving years off your own life. Now it was happening in front of them. They thanked the young lord in unison and then stepped impatiently onto the island. Immediately afterward, they discovered something else. At the entrance to the ruins, people in the Foundation's white uniforms were already waiting with stalls set up, and stacks of scrolls were laid out across the stalls. One cultivator walked over curiously and asked what they were. Dragon Cave Treasure Map, a woman from the Foundation said with a gentle smile. It records the locations of the various mechanisms, treasure troves and dangers inside the secret realm, and although it is incomplete, it runs at least 80% accurate. The sound of people drawing sharp breaths rose one after another. As everyone there knew perfectly well, exploring the unknown and hunting secrets means gambling for opportunity in the middle of danger. Against the handful who find treasure and walk out unscathed, a far greater number stay behind forever. There are countless hidden troves in this world, and there is not one of them that is not piled high with skeletons. With a map like that in hand, though, the survival rate climbs enormously. Even if a man's luck runs poor and he gains nothing at all, he can at least come out alive. Staying alive matters more than anything else. How many spirit stones? One cultivator asked tentatively, licking his lips. No spirit stones required, the Foundation member said, shaking her head and smiling. Our young lord said that those who dare enter secret realms to adventure are all courageous talents of the human race and the future hope of our human race. This treasure map is a gift to everyone. We hope that whether or not you gain anything, you can at least return safely, because no matter who is sacrificed, it would be a great loss for our human race. Once those words were out, every one of them was moved. Talents of the human race, and the future hope besides. Who exactly? Me. The people standing there were basically low-level cultivators from the very bottom of the cultivation world, long accustomed to the arrogance of great cultivators and the indifference and cruelty of strangers. Coming to explore a ruin, they had already prepared themselves for the possibility of never coming back. After all those years of cultivation, not one person had ever appraised them like this. Nobody had called them the hope of the human race, or said that any sacrifice among them would be a loss to humanity. The words left them in a daze, with a dreamlike quality that did not seem to belong to reality. It was not until the Foundation's deacons pressed the fresh maps into their hands that they were certain any of it was real. Im Yon looked at the map in his hand, deeply moved, and asked his teacher whether it was real. As your teacher, I have not entered these ruins either, Dan Hyun said, shaking his head, so I cannot judge. But given the status of the Wang family young lord, he would hardly bother playing tricks on all of you inside a secret realm at this level. It would be utterly meaningless. Im Yun's expression was complicated. A few days ago, when the Foundation was becoming popular, he had still been inside the remnant domain of that ancient Dragon Clan powerhouse. After coming out, he heard about what the Foundation was doing and was quite shocked, and since it was all hearsay, the feeling had not been strong. Now the treasure map was in his hand, and the impact of it reached a new height entirely. He has been working hard, Im Yun thought, to prepare for the coming catastrophe. The conversation the two of us had that day surfaced in his mind again. Brother Im, our world will soon face a devastating catastrophe. Everything I have done to you was for your own good. Brother Im, you carry the future of the world on your shoulders, and even if I have to bear infamy for it, I will not hesitate. Recalling that, and then thinking about everything he had seen and heard about me lately, Im Yun believed the words I once spoke a little more than he had. He asked his teacher with a bitter smile whether he had gone too far in leaving without a goodbye, supposing Wang Mok genuinely had not lied to him. Do not think too much about it, Dan Hyun told him. Given the situation at the time, you had no choice. If the truth comes to light one day, the worst you can do is give him a proper apology. If he truly had your best interests at heart, he should be able to understand the decision you made back then. Im Yun nodded and gripped the map tightly. Then he noticed something and said that this map records the locations of the mechanisms and treasure troves in great detail, and yet there is no information anywhere on where that flood dragon's corpse lies. Do not panic, Dan Hyun said. Did that young woman not just tell you? The records on this map are not complete and run about 80%, and it must have been put together by people who entered this secret realm in the past. That is a good thing. If something like Flood Dragon Essence Blood had actually been found by somebody already, how would it still be your turn to retrieve it now? Im Yun nodded and agreed that this was true, and then he stopped overthinking it and walked quickly toward the entrance. He actually appeared here, I said, withdrawing my gaze, somewhat surprised. Some time had passed since Im Yun escaped, and I had assumed he would be well clear of the North Sea area by now, and instead he still dared to come and explore. As expected of the child of luck, he really is bold. I had no thoughts at all of regaining control over him, because the risk runs too high. Setting aside the fact that he might slip away easily, the trust I built with such difficulty would collapse just as easily. If he wants to leave, then let him leave. Then again, a dungeon where the protagonist shows up naturally has in it. According to Lee Wanhwa, though, this secret realm had already surfaced twice in 700 years, and anything even slightly decent had been looted clean, leaving almost nothing behind. Old Lee, I asked, are you certain there is absolutely nothing good left in this secret realm? He thought for a moment and said that if he had to name something, that vile dragon's corpse has been missing without a trace since it crashed. The people who entered the previous 2 times could not find so much as a scale or a claw. Hearing that, I knew the matter was settled. Things that nobody else can find are usually pre-booked by the child of luck. In any case, I hold 30% of Im Yun's investment progress, and if he genuinely does obtain the opportunities inside and increases his strength enormously, all of that lands on me as well. An unexpected surprise. Have you prepared the things I asked you to prepare? I said, turning to Lee Wanhwa. He answered respectfully that it was all prepared. I nodded and told him to leave some people here to keep watch, and that as long as anybody came out alive, they were to receive the items. He asked whether that meant everyone. Yes, I told him. Every single one of them. He said he understood. Although this secret realm had already surfaced twice, and most of its treasures and opportunities had been scavenged, a large amount of fortune still existed for the low-level cultivators going in. The collection of a peak nascent Soul Dragon Clan powerhouse produces an enormous effect, even in fragments. That holds once it falls into the hands of a chi refining, foundation establishment, or even golden core cultivator. It is easy to imagine that if those cultivators come out of the secret realm alive, most of them will see their cultivators surge in a short time, which makes investing in them a very high rate of return. There was one more matter of the utmost importance. Also, I told him, keep an eye out for one person. I raised my hand and pinched lightly, and a wisp of aura emerged slowly. Lee Wanhwa took it, felt it carefully, and confirmed it belonged to a human race cultivator whose cultivation should not run high. If you find him coming out, I said, give him this storage pouch. Then I took out an empty storage pouch and began filling it. 2 sea-settling dragon pearls, 2 bottles of nirvana pills capable of saving a life at a critical moment. Then a full 100 high-grade spirit stones piled up like a small mountain, thick with spiritual chi. Lee Wanhwa asked who this person was, his eyes practically staring straight through the pouch. You do not need to worry about that, I told him. Just make sure the items reach his hands. If he asks questions or refuses, tell him that there is not much time left for us. He said he understood. Remember, I said. You must deliver the items into his hands and watch him accept them. Understood, he said seriously, taking a deep breath. This old servant will handle it personally. Although I had already settled on a strategy of cost-effective investment, when a child of luck walks past me, I still have to invest if I possibly can, because the return is genuinely that high. By now, I had maxed out the investment progress on little Nana. If I could max out Yan as well, with the cultivation rebates of 2 children of luck landing on me on top of the hundreds of millions of cultivators in the world, I would finally feel considerably safer. Even facing revenge from several children of luck later, I would not necessarily lack the power to fight back. The duration of a secret realm is never certain, and 2 or 3 months would be perfectly normal. I obviously could not stay there the whole time, so once the investment arrangements were settled, I rode the Golden Lion back to the Foundation headquarters on Xianzhou Island. Seop Zhongzhong reported that the Ascendance Assembly for the first batch of 100 outer islands was complete, and that they were preparing the second batch I had designated. She had changed into a dress today, and she stood at my right side leaning slightly forward with a hesitant look on her face. I smiled and told her to continue. It is only that the Foundation's funds are not quite enough, she said, so we may need to slow the pace of the Ascendance Assembly. The second batch of outer islands I had planned numbered a full 1,000. Although they were outer islands, and their area and everything else came in well below the inner ones, the resources a single one required were far less than a large island like Chenzhou. The quantity was still the quantity. Covering all of them would demand an astronomical figure. These past days, the income coming in from various parts of the Merchant Guild had risen alongside the Foundation's reputation. Only 1% of that income is ever allocated to the Foundation, which made it difficult to support Ascendance Assemblies running on more than 1,000 islands at once. The Ascendance Assembly cannot stop, I said, and I left no room for negotiation in it. This is my foundation. The moment the pace slows, my cultivation speed takes the hit. Xiao Zhongzhong pursed her lips and suggested that I might consider mobilizing funds from the Merchant Guild and injecting them into the Foundation. With my status, 1 command would be enough, and moving that money would not be difficult. I did not intend to do that, at least for now. 1% of the Merchant Guild's sales revenue going into the Foundation was not a ratio I picked casually. I worked it out carefully. Once the Merchant Guild's operating costs and labor costs come out, that is the optimal allocation under the condition that nobody's income takes damage. Push past it and the Merchant Guild's operation slides into an unhealthy mode. In the short term, nobody would complain because my status blocks it and they would give me face anyway. Over a long stretch, that would not hold. Although my grandmother Naren Younggun can hold the fort through anything, she has been wise her entire life, and I do not want her criticized behind her back because of me. The situation has not reached a point of no return. Do not stop the Ascendance Assembly, I told her. Expand it as planned. As for the money, I will find a way, and she responded respectfully. I flipped through the mountain of paper on the desk, found one particular sheet, put it into my spatial ring, and stood up to leave. Prepare the carriage, I said. We are going to the northern Dark Holy Land. Godforging Island is one of the 36 core immortal islands of the North Sea. Beneath it lies the largest submarine volcano in the entire sea, where subterranean fire surges and the spiritual vein runs more astonishing still. Add the powerful formation of the northern Dark Holy Land on top of that, and the surrounding fire veins sit highly condensed and perfectly utilized, which makes the place a supreme treasure land for either alchemy or artifact refining. The facts bear that out. The island is split in two, with the south side belonging to the Holy Land's Artifact Refining Pavilion, and the north to the Alchemy Pavilion, clearly divided. Not every disciple of either pavilion gets the chance to practice their craft on Godforging Island. Only the pavilion masters and a small number of prestigious elders live there permanently. Among disciples, only get an opportunity to come and practice every so often, and ordinary disciples work on other islands of the inner ring. The Golden Lion's spiritual might surged, and the instant it landed, it pulled attention from every direction. The great evil young Lord Wang is here, somebody hissed. Why is he here again, said another, and which side is he going to this time? I beg you, said a third. Please do not come to our alchemy pavilion. It was hard enough for finding a furnace of 5th grade Dongmyong pills, and we absolutely cannot let him ruin them again. I walked across the island while every Holy Land disciple who saw me went pale and scrambled out of my path as though a plague god had arrived. It was slightly awkward. The Holy Land disciples live in seclusion, mostly ignore worldly affairs and focus on cultivation, and they pay no attention to anything happening outside. Their impression of me is still whatever my predecessor left in their heads. My predecessor, relying on his status as the Saint Lord's son, did not confine his tyranny to the world outside the Holy Land. Take this island as the example, and he came here constantly. Whether it was precious medicine refined by the Alchemy Pavilion, or divine weapons and treasures from the Artifact Pavilion, or even unfinished artifact cores, anything he laid eyes on ended up snatched away. He never paid for a single piece of it. Logically, he had no use for any of those things, and even if he had, he was not lacking in anything. To put it bluntly, he snatched purely for the sake of snatching in order to feed the extreme emptiness inside him. Watching those people go furious and stay helpless against him made him feel full. In my view, that was already a precursor to becoming something genuinely twisted, and his psychology had begun bending in that direction. It is a good thing I took over, because otherwise his end would certainly not have been a good one. I shook the thoughts off and walked straight toward the artifact refining pavilion. From a distance I could hear hammering, and although the rhythm ran irregular, mixed together it was not chaotic at all, and carried a particular music of its own. In front of me stood over 100 scattered houses, and outside every one of them disciples and elders were busy refining treasures and forging precious iron, apparently enjoying themselves thoroughly. I walked to the tall building at the very center. Before I even got close, I could feel waves of scorching heat seeping out through the doors and windows, and the space itself seemed distorted by it. Standing outside, I could hear iron being forged continuously at an extremely high frequency. It made me picture a bare-chested man whose shoulders moved fast enough to leave afterimages striking more than a dozen times a second. Through the gap in the window, the scene inside made my eyes light up. A tall woman was working the forge. The temperature in there was high enough that she had dressed as lightly as the work allowed. Her expression was solemn as her hand seals changed rapidly, and runes flew out and merged into the furnace. The giant copper hammer she held gave off a brilliant light and hammered frantically at an artifact embryo I could not make out, striking off large patches of sparks. After a while, apparently deciding that was not enough, she pointed a finger, and 2 more large hammers flew in from the side to join the work. The sound of it filled the whole room with a pleasant rhythm. After a good while, she slowed and stopped. Changing her seals, she drew the artifact embryo out of the blazing fire, then picked up a hammer and went at it again by hand. Her movements were perfect. The muscles in her arms stood out the instant she swung, full of real power, and every strike landed exactly right. The sound never turned piercing and instead carried a charm of its own. I coughed at an appropriate moment. "Who is it?" she said, stopping and looking toward the door. "Senior Sister Yo-Yo," I said, walking in with a smile. "Long time no see." Yo-Yo is the true disciple of the artifact refining pavilion master of the Northern Dark Holy Land. She also ranks in the top 10 of the Holy Land's 100 Flowers list. In both talent and appearance, she is a standout there, regarded as a dream goddess by a considerable number of young talents. It was at that moment that a panel appeared in front of me on its own. It gave her name as Yo-Yo, her race as human race, and her realm as the middle stage of Nascent Soul. Her aptitude read divine grade. Her trait was listed as the 100 Refinement Profound Body, a natural talent for artifact refining, skilled at gaining insight into the great Tao through thousands of refinements. The rarer the materials she refines and hammers, the faster her cultivation grows. The investment evaluation called her potential extraordinary and recommended investment. As expected of the Pavilion Master's only true disciple, a prodigy essentially guaranteed to become the next artifact refining Pavilion Master, and carrying Nascent Soul cultivation at an age like that. My eyes narrowed slightly. "It is you," she said, her brows drawing together. She knew who I was, and clearly held no good impression of me. "What are you doing here?" I coughed twice and asked, pointedly, whether Senior Sister Ha might get dressed properly before we talked. At that, she registered the state she was in. A flash of shame and anger crossed her face. She called me a pervert and turned into the inner room. I opened my mouth and felt somewhat wronged, since she was the one who had not been dressed properly. So how exactly does that become my fault? Then again, considering I had in fact caught an accidental glimpse of some scenery, I decided not to argue about it. A moment later, she came back out in a loose green robe and looked at me coldly and told me to speak quickly and leave as soon as I was finished. That did not annoy me either, and I smiled calmly and told her I had come because I wanted to do some business with her artifact pavilion. "Business," she said, her brows furrowing as she looked me up and down with something playful in it. Could it be that young Master Wang has located his conscience and plans to pay this time instead of snatching? My expression did not change. I took out a blueprint, handed it over, and suggested she take a look first. Yo-Yo found that strange. She felt as though the Wang Mok in front of her had turned into a different person entirely. With this playboy's former temperament, being mocked that sarcastically would have sent him into a rage a long time ago, and now he behaved as though nothing had happened at all. She took the blueprint suspiciously and scanned it, and said that this is just a communication talisman with some extra decoration on it. "Senior Sister has a good eye," I said with a smile. "I want the artifact refining pavilion to modify communication jade talismans for me." At that she understood and went furious. "I thought you had changed your ways today," she said, "and it turns out you are exactly the same and more insidious besides. What do you take my artifact refining pavilion for?" A thing that low level with no difficulty in it, no skill in it, and no aesthetic sense in it, could be made by any random forge outside. Are you insulting my artifact refining pavilion? The artifact refining pavilion of the Northern Dark Holy Land might not be the top in the northern region, and it can at least rank in the top 5. The main reason is not any lack of skill, but their arrogance. They disdain taking on large volumes of low-level business the way ordinary forges do, hammering out first-grade and second-grade magic treasures to sell for money. They forge in order to pursue higher achievement and to enter the Tao through the artifact itself. They are a group of artifact refiners with ideals and something to chase. And here I was asking them to make substandard trinkets which read to them as a complete humiliation. Facing her anger, my expression did not shift and I kept smiling. "Do not be in a hurry, senior sister," I said. "I want a great many of them, and I will pay a great deal." "Sorry, young Master Wang," she said righteously. "If you want to flaunt your wealth, you have found the wrong place and the wrong person. My artifact refining pavilion will never throw aside its dignity for a few spirit stones. Please leave." I feigned a sigh and turned around and said that since that was the case, so be it, and that this order for 1 million items would simply have to go to somebody else. Her pupils constricted. "Young master," she said, "please stay." I turned back with a smile and an ambiguous expression and asked what it was. "Senior sister Yo-Yo," she asked with some uncertainty. How many pieces I had just said. "Over 1 million, I suppose," I told her. "This is only the first batch, and there will definitely be more later." Then, as though remembering something, I waved a hand and said that since the artifact refining pavilion was not interested, I could just as easily find another family. "Do not," she said. She flashed across the room, appeared in the doorway and blocked my path, and a hint of panic arrived on her face as she asked whether I was paying this time. "Senior sister," I said, "what are you saying? I came here representing the Manhwa Merchant Guild to do business with you. Of course I have to pay." A look of open temptation crossed Yo-Yo's face. The Holy Land has a profound foundation, and the annual consumption of the disciples in each branch is an astronomical figure, particularly in the Artifact Refining Pavilion and the Alchemy Pavilion. Both can fairly be called money-burning giants. Although the funding the Saint Lord assigns them each year is the highest among the 36 pavilions, those spirit stones are never enough. Because the Manhwa Merchant Guild keeps a deep relationship with the Northern Dark Holy Land, buying supplies in the Holy Land's name gets them substantial discounts, and without that they would be shorter still. On top of that, both pavilions have always been arrogant. Against taking large orders to earn spirit stones, they would rather pour most of their attention into researching new pill formulas, or new artifact patterns and casting techniques. As everyone knows, research is a bottomless pit. In previous years that was survivable, since the Holy Land was prosperous and self-sufficient, and although they lacked money, they were used to lacking it. Even if I had arrived with a large order back then, they might not have set aside their face for it. In the last 2 years, the Absolute Beginning Holy Land and other powers have targeted the Northern Dark Holy Land both openly and covertly. The Holy Land's development slid into a slump and its income was heavily discounted. The Artifact Refining Pavilion, already tight, had gotten poor enough that it could barely pay its disciples monthly stipends. That is why the instant she heard the words 1 million, Yo-Yo's whole reaction changed. If I was not toying with her, securing this order would relieve an enormous amount of pressure. "Are you true to your word?" she asked, biting her red lip lightly and studying my expression, still not quite trusting it. "When has this young master ever lied to you?" I said, perfectly calm. She sneered and asked what I thought. "Farewell," I said, snorting, and turned to go. She called after me not to go, hurrying over and grabbing my arm. "No," she said. "You have not lied, and you have never lied." "Forget it," I said. "This kind of low-level work, with no standard and no technique in it, is genuinely an insult to your artifact refining pavilion." "How could that be?" she said. "The simpler a thing is, the more extraordinary it is, and it is the best possible work for our young disciples to polish their foundations on." "But if I do this," I said, "will there be suspicion that I am showing off wealth? Would that not look bad?" "No," she said decisively. "Young Master Wang, do you still need to show off wealth? Who in the entire northern region does not know the young master of the Wang family is wealthy beyond measure? Anybody who says you are showing off is simply jealous of you." I looked at her and smiled and told her she genuinely has the potential to become the pavilion master of the Artifact Refining Pavilion, since she can bend and stretch as required. She heard the sarcasm perfectly well, and her cheeks went a little hot. "All right then," I said. "I will leave the blueprints. Here is the deposit." I took her hand and put a space ring into her palm. Her divine sense swept through it and found mountains of spirit stones inside, and her heart could not help trembling at the sight. She had never seen that many in her life. "This rich dog has all this money and never paid before," she muttered, grinding her teeth. "Truly a wicked pile of money bags." "What did you say?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. She clenched the ring, tucked it away, pressed it firmly into place. smiled all over her face, and told me that what she said was that the posture I used when I put the ring in her hand was truly handsome. I had nothing to say to that. Money genuinely can make ghosts push millstones. To turn a genius girl that volatile into a sycophant on the spot. Then again, it also showed from the side exactly how difficult a time the Northern Dark Holy Land was having. In the past, bringing out a sum that large would at most have earned me a few less eye rolls. When can it be finished? I asked, shaking off the stray thoughts and getting back to business. She flipped through the blueprints and thought about it. This kind of craft is not difficult, she said, and it does not necessarily have to be forged on God-Forging Island. Even newly admitted disciples of the Artifact Refining Pavilion will have no problem with it once they have run through it a few times. If we go at full power, about half a month will do. I nodded, satisfied, and told her I would wait for her good news, and then I turned and left. This guy does not seem quite as annoying anymore, Ha Yo-Yo muttered, watching my back. She did not know whether it was an illusion produced by having just taken an enormous sum of money off me. She felt I had changed a great deal. Do not think about it, she told herself. Tell Master this good news first. The Pavilion Master of the Artifact Refining Pavilion, who is also one of the 36 Grand Elders of the Northern Dark Holy Land, is Elder Heavenly Craft. He is obsessed with the Tao of artifact refining. Since taking Ha Yo-Yo as his disciple, he has handed nearly every trivial matter to her and spends his days in the heavenly #1 forging room studying his craft. If she does not go and find him, it is perfectly normal for him not to come out for half a year. In front of a tightly closed stone door, she rang the bell hanging at the entrance. She pulled it once and got no response, so she pulled it 3 more times in a row. As the crisp sound spread slowly through the cave, the stone door opened, and an unkempt elderly figure with hair like a beehive walked out. What is it? Elder Heavenly Craft said, frowning. Why are you in such a rush to call me out? She bowed, looking excited, and told him that Wang Mok just came, and his brows drew tighter. What is that unlucky thing here for again? He said. What did he rob this time? No, she said, shaking her head. He came to do business with us this time. He paid a sum of money to ask us to make a batch of communication talismans. What thing? He said, his eyebrows shooting straight up. Communication talismans, and this little fellow is simply too bullying. What does he take my artifact refining pavilion for? Some third-rate forging workshop out on the street. Then he looked at her and asked whether she had agreed. She pursed her lips and made a small sound of assent. He went furious, hating that she had failed to live up to expectations. Foolish, he said. Truly foolish. How have I taught you all these years? An artifact refiner must have integrity and principles, and you must never abandon the dignity of an artifact refiner for petty profit. Hurry and return the money to that brat. The disciples of my artifact refining pavilion will not spend half a spirit stone of that man's money even if they starve to death. She bit her lip, feeling somewhat aggrieved, and said that he had given a lot this time. No matter how much it is, it will not do, he said. This is a matter of principle. Do you understand principle? The deposit alone, she said, is a full 50 million spirit stones. 50 million, he said, and stopped halfway through the sentence, stunned, his angry expression stiffening on his face. Are you certain it is 50 million? He asked. Of course, she said, opening her palm to reveal the spatial ring. How can I possibly miscount? He immediately sank his divine sense into it, and then he fell silent. 50 million, he said. It is 50 million. So what if it is 50 million, he said, recovering his composure, his gaze going firm. Just because it is 50 million, does that mean he can leave without even drinking a cup of tea? Ha Yo-Yo made a bewildered noise. Did you not serve him tea? He demanded, and she admitted that she had not. I knew it, he said. You cannot do this next time. It is not easy for nephew Wang Mok to make a trip out here. So how can you fail to let him drink even 1 cup of tea? If word of that gets out, people will say we do not know how to treat a guest. He said it solemnly. She stared at her master. Are you? She said, not angry anymore. Why would I be angry? He said. What is there to be angry about? Money or not, that is all secondary. Nephew Wang Mok thinks highly of us and entrusted us with an order this large. And that is trust. In this world, only trust must never be betrayed. Understand? She said she understood. Remember, he said, you absolutely must not mess this up. If we cannot collect the final payment because of a quality problem, you will all see how I deal with you. Did you hear me? Her mouth twitched slightly and she said yes. All right, he said. That is all. He turned, put his hands behind his back and walked back through the stone gate. A while later, a muffled shriek came out of it. 50 million, the voice said. I have never fought a battle this wealthy in my entire life. I am rich. I am rich. Ha Yo-Yo silently activated the soundproofing formation her master had forgotten to turn on, and quietly left. Inside the tomb of the Dragon Lord, neither sun nor moon can be seen, and the place is not dim for it. A faint ethereal glow permeates every corner, and the lake water shimmers with a soft luster. 2 men and 1 woman arrived together at the lakeside, all 3 carrying injuries, their eyes full of the relief of people who have just survived a disaster. The woman collapsed straight onto the ground, gasping for air. It was too dangerous, she said. This secret realm has almost turned into a natural ground for nourishing yin. The dragon that died so badly here turned into a remnant soul and hides in the shadows, waiting for a chance to ambush intruders. One of the men agreed with lingering fear in his voice. Fortunately, he said, the treasure map the Nangya Foundation handed out carried markings and warnings from the beginning, so we were prepared and stayed vigilant. And that is the only reason we survived. Otherwise, I fear we would have ended up like fellow Taoist Jew and the others. At the mention of that name, all 3 of them fell silent. They had set out as a group of 6 or 7, and by the time they reached this point, only the 3 of them were left. The others had received the same map and had not trusted it, because they did not believe the Foundation would be that kind. Add the temptation of the opportunity waiting ahead and they lost their heads, and a single misstep finished them. A secret realm is dangerous, and even with a map, the crises that are coming still come. The only way out is to bypass them directly, and since crisis and opportunity live in the same place, bypassing the crisis usually means giving up the opportunity too. Take these 3. They had been lucky enough to survive, and they had still come away with that deeply hidden spiritual plant. As long as they could consume and refine it successfully, it would benefit their cultivation enormously. They had been foundation establishment cultivators with no hope of core formation. Now they had a glimmer of a chance. That is true, one of them said, and we certainly owe this favor. With our strength, said another, reaching this point without that treasure map would have been extremely difficult. It seems the Nangya Foundation is exactly what the stories say, a top-tier charitable organization. In a cultivation world this full of deceit, a third one said, the appearance of that foundation is genuinely a breath of fresh air. Then their eyes focused together on the center of the lake. The light there had suddenly intensified, illuminating a small piece of land at the center where a blood-red tree grew, and a few bright red spiritual fruits hung faintly visible beneath it, looking distinctly extraordinary. What is that? One of them said. There is no marking for it on the map, the woman said, taking the map out and studying it carefully, her expression solemn. It only says there is a great danger in this lake and to approach with caution. It looks like a spiritual fruit of extraordinary quality, one of the men said, temptation showing on his face. The fruit was growing brighter by the moment and giving off a rich, exotic fragrance that a person could hardly help being intoxicated by. 2 breaths of it and he felt the cultivation inside him rise a trace, and the 3 of them swallowed and struggled to hold their impulses down. Should we not go? The woman said, frowning, unwilling to move forward. The map says there is a great danger here. The map runs at 80% accuracy, the man said, and it did not mention that spiritual fruit at all, which means nobody has ever reached it, or perhaps it only matured recently. His gaze grew more intense with desire as he found the reasons he needed to convince himself. What does that mean? He said, looking at the other 2. It means our opportunity has arrived and we must not miss it. Fellow Taoist Jin is right, the second man said, persuaded. I will go with you. I think I will not go, the woman said, after pursing her lips and thinking about it for a long time. Very well, they said, to each their own, and told her to stay and wait for their return. The 2 men looked at each other, soared into the air, and flew toward the center of the lake. Just as they reached it, a huge black shadow rushed out from under the water, opened a bloody mouth and swallowed them both. The 2 changed color instantly and used every skill they had, driving a flying sword and a spiritual ring into the shadow, and struck nothing but sparks off it. The next moment, 2 screams and both of them went down its throat. Only then did the woman see clearly that the thing was a jet black demon crocodile carrying an aura far beyond anything they could contend with. It was not satisfied with 2 cultivators. It turned its head, fixed on her, and rushed over, shaking its head and lashing its tail, raising waves dozens of feet high across the lake. Terrified, her face bloodless, she ran for her life toward the exit of the secret realm. The demon crocodile opened its mouth and spat streams of water arrows with astonishing power behind them. She reacted fast enough in that life and death moment to shift her body, so it only caught her arm and shattered it instantly. Her face went pale and she did not dare hesitate at all. She took out every medicinal pill she owned and swallowed all of them at once, healing pills and boosting pills together, whole, one after another. She knew that slowing down even slightly meant a dead end. Even so, new wounds kept opening across her body, on her arm and her neck and over her heart, the injuries turning steadily more fatal, her pills exhausted and the exit close at hand. Almost there, she told herself. Almost there, she bit the tip of her tongue, called up the last trace of mana in her body and rushed out. Then a sharp pain arrived from her lower body, because a demon crocodile had bitten off her lower half. A flash of light crossed her vision. She finally left the secret realm with only her upper body remaining, and one arm gone, and she looked utterly wretched as she fell heavily to the ground. Her eyes went dim, the pain rolled through what was left of her, and despair filled her chest. She had escaped, and every pill she owned was gone, and with injuries that severe there was no meaningful difference between her and a corpse. She lay there breathing weakly while the world in front of her went darker and moved further and further away. "Is it still going to end here?" she whispered, in unwillingness and melancholy and despair. Just before her consciousness went out entirely, she saw a group of figures dressed in white, gathering quickly around her. Beside her ear, voices arrived faintly. "There is a wounded person here," one of them said. "Bring healing medicine quickly." Guchu woke again in a daze, her eyes full of confusion. Opening them, she found numerous figures in white robes moving around her and the sound of voices constant in her ears. "I am not dead," she said, stunned. She remembered perfectly clearly that the demon crocodile had bitten off half her body, that her injuries had been severe, and that she had already put half a foot through the gates of the underworld. She struggled to sit up and discovered the pain remained, and that her injuries had improved significantly, and even her mangled body had recovered a fair amount. That surprised her. For cultivators, physical defects are not a major problem, since there are a great many ways to recover from them. What is genuinely difficult are the foreign energies that invade through the wounds, malevolent energy and demonic chi among them, and those are the primary things that stop injuries healing. The demon crocodile that had been hunting her was incredibly powerful, so how troublesome the residual demonic power inside her must be went without saying, and resolving it would have demanded a significant price. "Do not move," a voice said from the side, gentle and stern at once. A woman in white robes had been preparing medicinal soup. Seeing her trying to rise, she pressed a hand quickly onto her shoulder and told her that her injuries had not healed and moving around was inadvisable right now. Guchu noticed the patterns and characters on the woman's clothing and was somewhat surprised. "Are you?" she said. "The Nongya Foundation." "Yes," the woman said, nodding, and brought the prepared soup to her lips and told her to drink the medicine first. In the cultivation world, swallowing something handed to you by a stranger is unquestionably a major taboo. At that moment, Guchu could not summon any wariness at all, and she obediently opened her mouth and drank it down. The expression in her eyes was incredibly complicated. She had not lived through the sea demon invasions in the Chungdan Archipelago or the Starfall Archipelago. Her understanding of the Nongya Foundation came mostly from rumor. Her only contact with them had been the treasure map she received before entering the secret realm, which had left her impression of them quite good. Only at this moment could she understand why so many people hold the Nongya Foundation in such high regard. Who would not like a group of people capable of saving your life at the critical moment? "All right," the woman said. "Rest a while longer. I still need to attend to other wounded patients." She set the medicine bowl down and walked off efficiently, and only then did Guchu notice that there were a great many other wounded people around her in exactly her condition. That judging by the injuries, they had all just come out of the secret realm. "When can I leave?" Guchu asked suddenly. "That depends on you," the woman said. "When you feel you have recovered enough, you can leave whenever you like, and you do not need to tell us." Guchu was very surprised, because the other party had shown no intention whatsoever of asking her for payment. Then she said, "How many spirit stones should I give you?" "There is no need to pay," somebody answered. The woman had already walked far away, and the one who answered was another young man from the Foundation, who looked over at her while treating the injuries of a cultivator in a nearby bed, and asked whether she had genuinely not known that their foundation has never charged money. Guchu had nothing to say to that. The sun was scorching, shining down on the sea and setting it shimmering, when Im Yun walked slowly out of the secret realm. He was unshaven and his face carried the marks of weather, and his eyes had gone more resolute still, with a hint of excitement shining out of them. He clenched his fists. "After all that hardship, I finally obtained it," he said. "It was not easy." Under Dan Hyun's guidance, he had successfully located the remains of a dragon nobody else had ever found, and used a secret technique to extract several drops of the dragon's core blood essence. Once he returned, he could begin practicing the Azure Heaven dragon transformation art. Then Im Yun felt something was wrong, because the surroundings had gone excessively quiet. He looked up and found every figure around him had suddenly vanished, and only a gray-robed elder stood a short distance off, watching him with a smile. He asked his teacher what was going on. He felt his guard rise, because a scene like this was too bizarre and he had never met anything like it. "Be careful," Dan Hyun said, and his voice had gone exceptionally grave. "This is the heaven and earth Tao domain of a soul transformation stage cultivator." Soul transformation stage. Im Yun's pupils constricted. At his current strength, borrowing his teacher's soul power and using every means he had, he could sweep through ordinary golden core stage powerhouses. And that was his ceiling. A soul transformation stage cultivator was an existence he could not contend with at all right now. He racked his brain and could not remember ever having any connection to a person at that level. "Do not be nervous," Dan Hyun said. "It looks like he holds no hostility, so handle this carefully." Dan Hyun was heavy-hearted as he said it. In his peak period, a mere soul transformation cultivator would not have troubled him for a moment, and now he had only a wisp of remnant soul left. Even using secret techniques, it would be very difficult to pull Im Yeon out of another man's Dao domain, because the gap was simply too wide. While he was still considering it, the elder had already arrived in front of Im Yeon and asked whether Your Excellency was young Master Im Yeon. Junior Im Yeon greets Senior, he said, taking a deep breath and bowing respectfully. At the same time, he quietly circulated his mana and closed his hand around an ancient bronze piece in his palm, ready to throw it at any moment. He knew perfectly well those means might do nothing at all in front of a soul transformation stage cultivator, and surrendering without a fight has never been his style. Young Master Im, the elder said, there is no need to be nervous. This old man carries no malicious intent, and I am merely here on the orders of my young lord, waiting for you. Im Yeon's small movements had of course not escaped Lee Wonhwa, who did not mind them and smiled gently. Im Yeon repeated the words, young lord, his pupils tightening slightly. Wang Mok. Exactly, Lee Wonhwa said, nodding, and held out a storage pouch. My young lord has prepared some gifts for you. Out of caution, Im Yeon did not take it, and shook his head and said that he could not accept a reward for no merit. My young lord knew early on that you would not agree, Lee Wonhwa said, smiling, so he specifically had me bring you a message. What message? Im Yeon asked. The time remaining for us is not much, Lee Wonhwa said. Im Yeon was stunned on the spot. Time? What time? Could it be the time he spoke of, regarding the great calamity that is coming? It seems the young lord of the Wang family holds no malicious intent toward you, Dan Hyun said. Since that is the case, there is no harm in accepting the items. Im Yeon stayed silent for a long while before finally reaching out to take the pouch, and asked that his thanks be conveyed to the young lord. I will, Lee Wonhwa said. He smiled slightly, turned, took a single step and vanished into the void realm. At the same time, the figures of all the other cultivators reappeared, and the noise came flooding back, leaving Im Yeon with the sensation of having just woken from a dream. That is the divine ability of a soul transformation cultivator, he said, a hint of fervor and longing arriving in his eyes. It is truly remarkable. What is this? Dan Hyun scoffed. With your talent, your future achievements are destined to run well past that. Did the young lord of the Wang family not also say you will become a great emperor one day? Im Yeon's mouth twitched slightly. He asked his teacher whether he believed that too. At least for now, Dan Hyun said, observing his words and actions. It does not look as though he is lying. By the way, check what he gave you first. Im Yeon opened the storage pouch and let his divine sense inside, and froze where he stood. He said the word teacher. Do you think it is too late for me to go back and join Wang Mok now? The system congratulated me, over and over, on successfully investing in Im Yeon. It ran the whole ladder at me without stopping. The sea-settling dragon pearls carried the progress into the 30s and 40s. The nirvana pill pushed it on, and the high-grade spirit stones dragged it past the halfway line and then past 70%. Finally, through the Tao comprehension tea leaves that closed it out. When the last notification cleared, Im Yeon's investment progress stood at 100%, and I would receive a full return on everything he ever cultivated from this day forward. Finally maxed out, I said, letting the breath go. I was sitting under the eaves at the Nanya Foundation headquarters on Chanjul Island, watching golden paulownia leaves come down across the courtyard like golden rain, and I felt extremely satisfied with the world. I had now maxed the investment progress on 2 Children of Luck, which amounts to having 2 Children of Luck cultivating frantically on my behalf. On top of that, with the resources I had handed over, Im Yeon's cultivation would break through several times in a short window. I hope he gets stronger before I break through to the Golden Core realm, I thought. For the past 2 days, my own cultivation had been accelerating, and it felt as though I could break through to Golden Core at any moment. The Golden Core realm is a watershed, and it is also the barrier that separates mortals from prodigies. Golden Cores divide into 9 grades. The deeper a cultivator's foundation and accumulation, the higher the quality of the core they condense, the stronger their combat power runs, and the further it can push their future potential. Generally speaking, for the vast majority of cultivators, the core they produce does not reach a grade at all. They squeeze into the realm barely, exhaust every scrap of potential they own, and have no hope of ever reaching Ascent Soul. Entering the lower 3 grades is already extraordinary, and usually means the cultivator held certain opportunities and practiced a powerful technique, and those have hope of Ascent Soul and essentially stop there. The middle 3 grades carry a high probability of achieving Ascent Soul and do not rule out higher realms. Usually only core disciples of major immortal sects, practicing powerful techniques and carrying special spiritual bodies, ever manage them. The upper 3 grades are rare and hard to come by and difficult to encounter anywhere in the outside world, usually appear only in peerless prodigies like the true disciples of Holy Lands, or saints and saintesses. That is not all of it either. Ancient records state that across history there have been a great many prodigies who suppressed an entire era and refused to walk the beaten path. Some broke straight through the 9-grade limit and condensed an unprecedented 10th grade golden core. Others did not break the grade and condensed cores carrying strange phenomena instead, with names like Peace Throughout the Four Seas, or 9 dragons pulling a coffin, or heavenly thunder transforming into purgatory. Those types usually carry terrifying combat power well past cultivators of the same realm, and fighting across ranks comes to them as easily as drinking water. My mother, the Northern Dark Saint Lord, condensed the phenomenon called sword severing the 9 heavens, and from that day her sword Tao climbed into the sky and nothing has stopped it since. I remain very confident in my own foundation, whether in mana or in the physical body. I have already gone past the limits, and the top prodigies of the Holy Lands do not compare. Then again, who has ever complained that their foundation ran too deep? If Im Yan and Little Nana comprehend more Tao techniques and divine abilities in this window and improve faster, all of that arrives on me as a boost and an accumulation. Speak of the devil. Right then a system notification went off in my mind. The Little Nana I invested in had successfully achieved foundation establishment. I had received a return on her cultivation effects, and the strength of my Tao comprehension immortal heart had increased. That my insight into the heaven-usurping creation art had improved far enough that I had comprehended its foundation establishment chapter. Feeling the powerful energy surging through me and the vast quantity of information arriving in my head, I could not help narrowing my eyes. Comforting. Counting the time, it had been about a month since Little Nana created the chi-refining chapter of the heaven-usurping creation art. 1 month, from the beginning of chi-refining straight into foundation establishment. At that speed, even the true disciples of the Holy Lands are nothing special. On top of that, given her particular situation, as her heaven-usurping creation art continues improving, her cultivation speed only accelerates, until eventually it breaks away from common sense entirely. She is worthy of being a child of luck, and there is nothing else to say about it. Let us go, I said. Let us go and see that girl. The Foundation headquarters occupies a vast area, and Little Nana has an independent residence and courtyard inside it. I had arranged a full set of cultivation rooms, a scripture pavilion, and a treasure vault for her, all at the highest specification. For the sake of secrecy, every one of them sits underground beneath a formation. I do not want her uniqueness exposed. This early, as far as outsiders are concerned, she is simply a little sister. The young lord is raising privately. When I arrived, she was sitting cross-legged in the cultivation room with her feet bare, absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to stabilize her realm. I did not disturb her and waited quietly. After a while, she opened her eyes, and the moment she saw me, they filled with surprise, and she jumped straight up and ran over on her bare little feet and launched herself at me. "Wang Mok," she said. "I succeeded. Nana is great," I said, catching her and chuckling. "Really amazing." Hearing my tone, she wrinkled her nose in dissatisfaction and accused me of coaxing a child again. I held up 4 fingers and swore that I genuinely was not, and that I genuinely thought she was amazing. She made an unimpressed noise, and then, seeing the sincerity in my eyes, wore the expression of somebody deciding to let me off and buried her head against my shoulder. Perhaps because she went through great disasters as a small child and saw exactly how cold the world runs, Little Nana does not want people treating her like a child. Being treated that way leaves her feeling deeply unsafe. In my eyes, she is a pitiful, entirely cute little sister who needs somebody to look after her. "Let us go," I said, carrying her outside. "I will take you for a bath and then we eat. How long have you been shut up in here, and you are already smelly?" A look of panic arrived on her face. She raised her arm to smell it, wrinkled her nose, and told me I was a bad man and a liar and demanded to know where any smell was. Practitioners from chi refining onward can cleanse the marrow and the bones and expel the body's impurities. At Foundation establishment, it goes further still, since they can keep a body from decaying even after death. So where exactly would an odor come from? I was obviously joking with her, and I smiled and said that if there was no smell, then perhaps she had simply farted. Then I had to ask why the little girl was biting people while we were talking perfectly properly. "Bad man Wang Mok," she said, talking nonsense. "I will bite you to death." The system kept handing me cultivation returns while I sat there. Jang Mok pushed my mana up and carried my profound gold technique experience with it. Ju Wool did the same and lifted my Jade Maiden technique. Then somebody the notification insisted on calling the Yin Yang Taoist delivered mana, a large block of experience and a technique I will not be naming aloud. A quantity of bedchamber arts I had not requested from anybody. I looked at the prompts drifting across the system interface and wondered why it felt as though something strange had wandered into the batch. These past days I could clearly feel the individual rebates arriving larger than they used to. That meant some of the cultivators I had invested in were improving significantly over a short window, and doing it in batches. It was basically certain who every one of them was, Every one of them had picked up an opportunity inside that flood dragon burial ground, which told me the direction worked. In future, I said, pay more attention to any information about secret realms and ruins. If anybody is willing to sell, we can purchase the information directly. Yes, young lord, Seok answered without any hesitation at all. She had changed into an extremely close-cut black dress today, which not only made everything about her more pronounced, but revealed a shape that her usual loose robes had been hiding entirely. I looked at her and could not help sighing that she had changed. She asked me, genuinely puzzled, in what way exactly she had changed. You never used to wear clothes like that, I said. Do you have any idea how easily it distracts me and makes me lose track of what I was just saying? Then she asked me, should I simply stop wearing it altogether? No, I told her, and said she should wear exactly that every day from now on. Once I have seen it enough, I will get used to it. Do you understand exactly what it is I am telling you? Yes, young lord, she said again. Watching me deliver complete nonsense with a perfectly serious face, she covered her mouth and giggled, and then, with a mischievous thought arriving, pushed her shoulders back a little further. Honestly, before all this, she would never have dressed like that anywhere near me. My reputation used to be too poor for it since my predecessor was practically a walking disaster where women were concerned. Now, the more time she spent beside me, the more deeply she felt that everything she had heard before was rumor. Or else, it was a method the young lord used to keep his brilliance out of sight. In her time at my side, she had watched me blunt the edge of the 3 great merchant guilds again and again, without appearing to work at it. Every decision looked absurd when it landed, and only on reflection did anybody realize there had been a purpose sitting underneath it. A young lord like that was simply too dazzling to look at directly. By the way, I said to her, where exactly was I before that? Purchasing information about secret realms, she reminded me with a small laugh. Right, I said, and we can buy if the price is reasonable, and the price depends on the rank of the secret realm. She asked whether the young lord wanted to send people into the secret realms to hunt for treasure. No to that, I said, shaking my head at her. For every ruin and every secret realm, if we can get detailed information about it, we give away maps and guides. If we cannot, we set up aid stations at the entrances, provide medicinal pills and material subsidies to every cultivator walking out of a secret realm. Her eyes brightened, and she asked whether that meant just like the flood dragon burial ground. I nodded at her about that. Looking at my profile, she could not stop herself from saying that the young lord really is a good person. If my earlier actions had carried a little of the flavor of spending money for publicity, that no longer applied. The reputation of the Nongya Merchant Guild and the Foundation was already established, and even if there was room to improve the public image further, it would not bring the Merchant Guild much additional profit. And I was insisting on running a business guaranteed to lose money. Beyond kind-heartedness, she could not think of a single other reason for it. I smiled at that and did not explain any of it. How would Seok know that what I actually value is the potential of cultivators who can survive danger and keep breaking their own limits? For me, every cultivator like that is an excellent return on investment. Or, put more accurately, the whole arrangement is a screening process that lets me invest far more precisely. In a cultivation world like this one, a low-level cultivator who will not even dare enter a secret realm has an achievement ceiling fixed in place. Unless a major power stands behind him the way one stands behind me, there is not much of a future waiting past that ceiling either. Once the news went out, it caused an enormous stir very quickly. At the Bongnai Merchant Guild, Dang Chan received the news and his brow drew down. What is that young lord of the Wang family doing collecting information on secret realms and ruins? Guanxi said, thoroughly puzzled. With his status and position, he cannot possibly lack resources. Seo Yansang added, equally bewildered. And ordinary secret realms are not worth his attention at all. He cannot simply be bored with his own life, somebody said. Dang Qian looked up at Seo Yansang and asked whether she did not think his actions this time looked very much like the previous two. She made a small, confused noise in response to the question. Before, he said, he used the guise of a playboy to pretend to be a pig in order to eat the tiger. It looked like a foolish act of flaunting wealth and throwing money into the sea, and it cost us an enormous amount of business in the North Sea. Right now, he clearly intends to run the same trick again. Does young Master Dang mean he has another scheme? Guanxi asked. Exactly that, Dang Qian told him, and he said it decisively. Then what exactly is the scheme supposed to be? Guanxi asked. Dang Qian stayed silent a while before he answered it. It cannot be confirmed for now, he said, and it is certain that there is something he wants inside the secret realms and ruins about to appear, because otherwise he would never do this. Guanxi nodded thoughtfully and asked what that meant they should do. Dang Qian took a deep breath and his gaze went dark. No matter what he wants, he said, our purpose is exactly one thing, and that is to make him fail at the final moment. He can buy secret realm information and so can we. And we can offer a higher price than he can. I do not believe he gets his way this time. In 2 short days, the Nanya Merchant Guild received an enormous quantity of intelligence. It arrived as a mix of truth and falsehood with no easy way to separate them. Most of it ran a few words long and read like rumor pulled out of the air. Obviously fake at a glance. That is normal enough in a business that runs like this one, in whose cultivation world do secret realms and ruins lie around in every direction. With a large enough volume, though, some genuine ones are bound to surface. I told Xiao Zhongjong to first assemble a group of cultivators with high realms and long experience to analyze everything that came in. Filter out the useless majority of the material first of all. Identify the small handful of reports that carry the highest credibility. Then have Li Wanhua and the others take people out and investigate each of those in turn. That approach runs far more accurate, and its efficiency runs far lower. On the other side, the 3 great merchant guilds were offering very high prices. The Nanya Merchant Guild would pay 1,000 spirit stones for information carrying a certain degree of accuracy. The 3 great merchant guilds were handing over 5,000, and they accepted everything regardless of accuracy. There was exactly one condition attached to the whole arrangement. A contract had to be signed, stating that whatever was sold to them could never be sold to Nanya afterward. For a time, the cultivators of the entire North Sea went wild. The 3 great merchant guilds were genuinely generous with their offers. Countless cultivators sold them whatever they knew about secret realms and ruins in exchange for spirit stones. Even the low-accuracy material brought in at least 5,000, and anything with evidence behind it and real credibility brought tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. The branches of the Bungnai, Sahe, and Ungong merchant guilds were overcrowded for days. It has to be said that under the lure of heavy rewards, the 3 great merchant guilds made a great many gains. The North Sea is vast, and while advanced ruins are one matter, small ruins and secret realms are not difficult to find at all. 800 miles west of Guryong Island, deep in the mountains of an island, rays of light shot suddenly into the sky. Spiritual energy swirled, and the dazzling aura of treasure covered the entire forest. Cultivators on the surrounding islands soared up one after another and converged on the location. Could a heaven and earth treasure have appeared? One of them said. Judging by that aura, said another, it has to be at least a top-grade magic treasure to cause a commotion like this. It might not be a magic treasure at all, a third said. It looks a great deal more like a grotto heaven to me. A great many loose cultivators rushed the island with their faces lit up, and found the place already occupied. This place now belongs to our 3 great merchant guilds, a middle-aged man in blue robes said. All idlers standing anywhere near here can get out now. He stood on the void realm with his hands behind his back, blocking every path, his expression completely blank. By what right? One of the loose cultivators said indignantly. Since ancient times, a heaven and earth treasure belongs to whoever is fated to have it. You people are behaving like a pack of common bandits. The middle-aged man glanced at him indifferently and let a scornful smile tug at his mouth. Naive, the man in blue said. Then he flicked one sleeve at the man, very lightly. A beam of spiritual light tore the air and struck the loose cultivator who had spoken. There was a scream. His physical body collapsed, his primordial spirit went out, and he fell straight down and sank into the seabed. The whole scene around the 3 of them went deathly silent. The dead man's friend showed grief and fury and did not dare make a sound, and could only grind his teeth, clench his fists, and retreat, angry and unable to say so. These 3 great merchant guilds are too overbearing, somebody said quietly. What exactly can any of us do about it? Said another. This is the cultivation world, and the weak have been prey to the strong since ancient times. I simply do not understand any of it, said a third. The 3 great merchant guilds own every kind of treasure there is, so why must they fight loose cultivators over opportunities? Who knows anything? Somebody answered. Setting aside whether they have some ulterior motive, even if they do not, and they are simply bored and do not want us obtaining anything, what exactly can we do about it? Similar scenes played out several more times over the following days. The 3 great merchant guilds bought a large volume of information about treasures, secret realms, and other opportunities, and once a location was confirmed, they sent experts to guard it in advance. When the timing was right, they plundered everything they could carry and left nothing behind, and they stationed people to keep anybody else from approaching. Unless a person was a disciple of a major sect with close ties to the 3 great merchant guilds, they were not permitted to enter and search. After it happened enough times, the dissatisfaction among cultivators grew by the day. To the 3 great merchant guilds, that anger was as harmless as children playing house. Siup Zhongjung reported that the 3 great merchant guilds had muscled in and were scavenging secret realms and ruins everywhere, and that the information reaching us was becoming less and less. At the Nanya Foundation headquarters, little Nana was sitting under a tree with a book. I was leaning back in my chair, basking in the sun, tapping my fingers rhythmically against the armrest, and I was very calm about all of it. I know all of that perfectly well already, I told her. Should we also raise our prices appropriately, she asked, and perhaps relax the accuracy requirement? I looked at her, honestly puzzled by the entire suggestion. Why would I spend money on that? I said, and asked whether she thought I had money to burn. If the accuracy of the information cannot be guaranteed, what exactly is the point of buying any of it? Would that not simply turn me into a complete sucker? But if we do this, she said, will your plan not be affected? A little, I said, and it will not have much impact. I stretched comfortably and asked whether Elder Lee and the others had sent back any news. They had already sent word back. Among the 13 intelligence locations left after multiple rounds of screening, 3 could confirm the existence of ruins, and 2 of those, barring accidents, would appear in the near future. How long is the near future supposed to be? I asked. As short as 3 to 5 months, she said. As long as a year or so. That is far too long a wait for me, I said. Is there any way at all to make them appear earlier? I will ask, she said, and walked aside, took out a communication talisman, and contacted Lee Manhwa. I watched her do it and thought about the order I had placed with the artifact refining pavilion. Counting the days, the first batch of deliveries was 3 days out. Over this stretch, the Foundation's funds had been getting steadily tighter, and fortunately the Merchant Guild was making a fortune daily. So while running a certain deficit, it could still hold on a while longer. Left too long, though, it would exhaust every resource we had. Still, as the saying has it, reputation genuinely does bring profit growth. Leaning on reputation alone, though, the profit increase has a ceiling on it. To expand profits properly, a man needs more practical methods, ones that stimulate consumption and capture a market. A while later, Seo Jongjong came back and reported that Senior Lee said it was very simple. Then let them appear early after all, I told her. At the same time, arrange for the Foundation and the Merchant Guild to release the news in advance. The more people who hear about the whole thing, the better. Yes, she said, and her expression stayed complicated because she could not quite follow what I was doing. I had spent good money buying up news and intelligence. That I had gone to considerable lengths to make those secret realms surface early, even granting that I was not as excessive as the 3 great merchant guilds, and had no intention of monopolizing anything. There was no need to publicize the news and hand it to everybody alive. What exactly was any of that supposed to mean? At a certain market, a group of cultivators had gathered, and were whispering to each other about it. Have you heard, one of them said, that 300 miles west of Myeonggok Island a golden core stage ruin appears in 3 days? Really, said another. And is that news of yours actually reliable? Not sure, the first said, but it was released by the Nongya Merchant Guild, so it should not be fake. It feels genuinely strange to me. A third of them said, a normal person who learned something like that would want the secret kept as tightly as possible, so how does anybody publicize it? Brother Yu suspects there is a trap in it, somebody asked. One simply has to be cautious about it, he said. Brother Yu speaks the plain truth there, another of them agreed. If this news had come from another faction, it might genuinely be hiding a trick, but Nongya, I think, can genuinely be trusted on this. That is right enough, said the next man along. The reputation of the Nongya Merchant Guild and its foundation is excellent, and the foundation has saved countless lives. For a mere golden core stage ruin, they would hardly destroy a reputation they worked that hard to build. In a restaurant in a certain city, the talk ran along the same lines. Another ruin is about to appear somewhere, one man said. What exactly is going on lately? Things you might not encounter once in several years have shown up this many times in a single stretch. I heard it is because the 4 great merchant guilds are looking for something and are buying news about secret realms, like lunatics, said another. Not even sparing the tombs left behind by Foundation establishment cultivators. So what if we get the news? Somebody else said. Is there genuinely a share in it for small, loose cultivators like us? Even if we go, will we not simply be driven off? Do not say that. Another cut in because you genuinely should not say that. This time the situation is different. The news came from the Nongya Merchant Guild, and their conduct runs far better than the 3 great merchant guilds. It is said they agree to let all cultivators participate, and if you can walk out of the secret realm, they will even provide medicinal pills and material subsidies. Somebody hissed aloud and asked whether that was genuinely true. For a time the cultivators were in an uproar all over again. What did you say? Dang Qian said, his eyebrows shooting up as he stared at Guanxi, barely able to believe his own ears. Guanxi sighed inwardly and repeated the whole thing. The Nongya Merchant Guild has indeed done this, he said. They have made every secret realm and ruin they discovered public, with no intention of monopolizing any of it. The room went silent instantly, and Dang Qian's brow furrowed deeply. He ran through a great many things in a very short span of time, and he still could not understand it. Why, and what was the purpose of the Nongya Merchant Guild doing this? They spent that kind of price searching out the locations of secret realms and ruins, he said, and in the end it was not for their own use. They chose to publish all of it instead, so what exactly are they after? Young Master Dang, Guanxi said, thinking for a moment. The Nanya Merchant Guild did not actually pay a very high price. In fact, their expenditure on obtaining information runs far below what our three great merchant guilds have spent. Xiao Yansang pursed her lips at the question. Is it possible, she said, that their focus was never anything inside the secret realms at all, but something outside them? Guanxi turned and looked at her suddenly. You mean, he said, that the Nanya Foundation providing medical treatment and supply subsidies to cultivators leaving the secret realms is their core objective? Judging by the past style of that young lord of the Wang family, she said, nodding. It is not impossible. Dang Qian said nothing to any of it. It was perfectly true. Against the expenditures of the three great merchant guilds in this area, Nanya's spending amounted to a drop in a bucket. So why had the three of them done it? Because the point was to stop my plan succeeding. They did not know what I was planning. And as long as they were certain I was after something, dismantling the scheme was the correct move. No matter how much money the three of them lost. As long as I did not profit, it counted as a success. That sounds childish and somewhat willful when set out plainly. Their three great merchant guilds had dominated the business world for a great many years though, and after being toyed with several times in a row, it was impossible for resentment not to accumulate. This apparently irrational behavior was simply a way of venting it, and even if it only made the young lord of the Wang family slightly uncomfortable, it was worth the money. But suppose they had missed the point entirely. If the Nanya Merchant Guild's actions this time were only meant to maintain and keep raising the Foundation's reputation exactly as before, then what did their own actions amount to? They had spent a massive quantity of spirit stones to buy a pile of information of mixed veracity, occupied a collection of worthless low-level ruins and magic treasures, obtained a heap of garbage wildly disproportionate to the investment. In other words, their full-scale barrage had hit nothing but empty air. If that were genuinely the case, that young lord of the Wang family probably could not stop laughing at them right now. The business world is a battlefield, full of change, Dang Qian said expressionlessly. Nobody can guarantee every decision comes out perfectly correct. Even if we failed to interfere with Nanya this time, it gave us a more precise understanding of Wang Mok's style, and that is also a gain. Next time we will not make the same mistake. Hearing that, Guanxi and Xiao Yansong exchanged a glance and both nodded with a trace of admiration in it. As expected of the new son-in-law, the Bongnay Merchant Guild had entrusted with heavy responsibility. His mindset had not been shaken in the slightest by a minor setback, where a man of ordinary temperament might have broken down entirely. Very well then, he said. There are many trivial matters in the guild, and I am sure you both have things to handle, so I will not keep you. The two of them took their leave. Once the two of them were gone, Dang Qian was the only person left in the room. The calm on his face distorted all at once. His breathing went rapid. His eyes turned bloodshot. His fists clenched as he drove one of them through the expensive gold-veined stone table in front of him. Wang Mok, he said, congratulations. You have thoroughly enraged me, and you have already set yourself on a road that ends in death. The true war has only just begun. Senior Sister Yo-Yo, I said I have not seen you in half a month, and you have become even more radiant. Even if you praise me, Ha Yo-Yo said, you cannot come up half a spirit stone short on the final payment, or I take this straight to the Saint Lord. She was dressed exceptionally lightly today and had clearly just come out of the forging room, and she was covered in sweat, which gave her the look of somebody capable and heroic at once. She stared at me like a hawk watching a man who might run out on his responsibilities at any moment. Over the past half-month, the entire body of Artifact Refining Pavilion disciples had worked day and night to finish my order. Although they were producing low-level communication talismans, the Artifact Refining Pavilion has its own pride. Even for simple objects, they had to forge them in their own style rather than turn out the low-grade goods available outside. With that much effort invested, if I took the goods and ran off the way my predecessor used to, they would suffer an enormous loss. Ha Yo-Yo would not be able to explain it to the Pavilion disciples or to Elder Heavenly Craft. So she had to keep her eyes on me, and if I did not pay, I absolutely was not leaving. Look at what you are saying, I told her, and asked whether my reputation was genuinely that worthless. Heh, she said, and asked me what I thought. Senior Sister Yo-Yo, I said indignantly, you cannot always look at people through tinted glasses. She frowned and asked what tinted glasses were. My point, I said, is that I am no longer the same person I was. You stay in the Holy Land all day, oblivious to the world, so you would not know. If you stepped outside and asked around, who in the entire North Sea would fail to give me a thumbs up and call me a great man the moment Wang Mok came up? Her mouth twitched slightly and her eyes filled with disdain, as though the words as if I would believe that had been written across her face. I huffed, determined to prove my innocence today, and reached out and produced a jade stele. See this, I said. What exactly is it? She asked. This, I said, is a karma stele jointly issued to me by the three great merchant guilds, Bongnai and Sahe and Ungong together. They issued it to thank me for my outstanding contributions to the peace of the northern region's cultivation world. Her expression changed at that. She took the stele, which carried the words immeasurable karma cut into the front, and my name along with a run of gratitude on the back, and inspected it repeatedly. I can indeed find the distinct refining techniques of the artifact refiners from those 3 guilds in this, she said, somewhat surprised. Are those 3 great merchant guilds not at odds with your Nangya merchant guild? And why on earth would they give you this? It is precisely because they compete with the Nangya merchant guild, I said righteously, that their evaluation reads as especially genuine. Does it not? Those words actually carried some sense in them. A man even his rivals admire is usually no simple character. Ha Yo-Yo looked at me suspiciously, and no matter which angle she took, I did not resemble a great philanthropist so much as a crooked merchant. Had the man genuinely changed after all? She did not fully believe my explanation, and her attitude had wavered and shifted slightly all the same. At that point I was already satisfied, because I knew the stele would do its work. I put the jade away carefully, like a treasure, and waved a hand. All right, I said. Let us inspect the goods first. According to your requirements, she said, we have divided these 1 million communication talismans into 4 styles. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. Each model comes in 4 ranks: 700,000 Starlight, 200,000 Bright Moon, 80,000 Blazing Sun, and 20,000 Universal. The overall functionality matches a standard communication talisman, and we selected the best materials, made multiple improvements to the imaging formation, and added some interactive capability on top. I took the spatial ring out of her hand and waved it, and 4 communication talismans of different sizes and shapes floated up in front of me. All 4 were of the Azure Dragon style, with the back crafted from a special dark gold into a coiled dragon pattern that looked ready to eat somebody, exceptionally domineering and cool. The first difference was color. Starlight came in bronze, Bright Moon in a secret silver, and Blazing Sun in a brilliant gold. The Universal was the most magnificent of them, in a noble purple accented with deep black, with the dragon's eyes inlaid with crimson crystal that gave off a radiance both noble and understated. The main body of the front was a mirror surface crafted from deep-sea dark gold, so smooth a person could use it as an actual mirror. I was extremely satisfied. I fell in love with these designs at first sight, and going to the artifact refining pavilion had clearly been the right call. For a young, handsome, aspiring cultivator like me, forever thinking about soaring toward his ideals, basically nobody can resist an exterior that cool. And even holding one as an ornament is worth the money. The overall look sat extremely close to a transformation device out of some superhero story. And because of the materials, it carried a sense of weight and reality and nobility that inferior plastic never manages. Appearance was the first and most obvious area where I demanded this batch stand apart from everything on the market. Even the lowest ranked Starlight, taken out on its own and set beside an ordinary communication talisman, achieves an absolute dimensional reduction strike. They are not on the same level at all. It is scrap metal against a piece of finely worked gold jewelry. In the cultivation world, the vast majority of artifact refiners and merchant guilds are relatively pragmatic. Their understanding of a product mostly stops at the attribute of being useful, which is normal enough. The cultivation world is full of crises, and a flashy object certainly cannot compete with one that is genuinely powerful and durable. That led to almost nobody investing any effort in the appearance of an item like a communication talisman. In their view, why bother, when the result performs identically? As long as the thing is presentable and not ugly, that is enough. I lived through an era of commercial explosion. I know how to take a ubiquitous dime a dozen product and give it back its appeal, so that a consumer feels novelty and wants to buy. Appearance is the first step of that. I picked up a Starlight Azure Dragon communication talisman, and under her guidance injected a wisp of spiritual power into it. The dull mirror surface suddenly threw out a dazzling light. A dragon-shaped projection rose off the talisman and let out a long roar full of might. And then the dragon shadow darted through the air and converged into a coiled dragon pattern. That was the boot animation. Immediately afterward, a blank interface came into view, and in that large interface sat exactly one lonely icon with a single word beneath it, which was communication. Clicking it brought up a contact list. There are naturally no telephone numbers in this era. Between cultivators, adding one another's contact information means gifting the other party a wisp of your own aura, which lets them transmit information inside the communication talisman to wherever you happen to be when they cast. That method carries a great many drawbacks. If the distance runs too far and the cultivator's base is insufficient, the power of the talisman cannot span that spatial distance, and the message never arrives. If a forbidden zone sits between the two, the sensing of chi fails and the target cannot be found at all. So in the current cultivation world, communication talismans only genuinely suit daily contact between cultivators who are close together, relatively settled, and not running all over the map. I had prepared a solution for that a long time ago. Have those communication hubs I asked for been refined? I said. Hubs, she said, and then caught up. Oh, you mean those formation plates? They are in the ring in your hand as well. Look for them yourself, since they may be buried a bit deep. Inside one ring sat a full 1,000,000 communication jade talismans piled up like a mountain, which naturally makes finding anything difficult. I rummaged for a good while before finally turning up over 100 formation plates engraved with intricate runes, and a crystal the size of a man's head shimmering with 9-colored sunlight. According to your requirements, she said, every one of these communication talismans carries a unique mark. As long as a talisman is activated, its aura goes first to the nearest formation plate, and then through the connection between the plates it transfers to the Heavenly Heartstone. As long as you control the Heavenly Heartstone, you can know the current location of every recorded communication talisman. The distance is limited, of course. For now, it can probably only cover the North Sea region. Listening to the explanation while sweeping the objects with my divine sense, I got more satisfied the further she went. Not bad, I told her, and I meant genuinely not bad. My goal was very simple. One-on-one communication is easily intercepted and prone to every sort of accident, which makes it uncontrollable. So I would imitate a method out of my past memories and build a large-scale communication network instead. The Heavenly Heartstone is not rare in the cultivation world, and gets used commonly in large sects to record the auras of their disciples. Once a disciple runs into trouble outside, the stone senses it, and the powerful members of the sect know immediately where that person is and can send a rescue. Even if the rescue arrives too late, they at least know where the disciple died. I was using it here as a server, and those formation plates function as network points and signal towers. The plan is to place one at every Nanya Merchant Guild location inside the North Sea. That way, as long as a Nanya branch stands nearby, communication runs without trouble. A forbidden zone or some special environment can sit between me and whoever I want to reach, and it changes nothing. As long as other Nanya branches are within range, the signal routes to them first and forms a network, bypassing the difficult ground and completing the call anyway. As for how a cultivator trapped deep inside a forbidden zone communicates, I have some plans there too. A man eats one bite at a time. Let us implement the first step first. Seeing me full of praise, Ha Yo-Yo drew herself up proudly. When my artifact refining pavilion makes a move, she said, how could it be ordinary? Young Master Wang, since the inspection checks out, it is time to pay the final payment. That is only natural, I said without hesitating. Just as I was about to pay, several system notifications went off in my mind at once. The Imyon I had invested in had refined the sea-settling dragon pearl and cultivated the advanced version of the Azure Heaven Dragon transformation art, and I had received the return on his cultivation gains. Streams of power surged wildly through my body, and my pupils constricted. I felt as though I were about to split open. I had already been sitting at a critical point where I could break through at any moment, and the instant Imyon's rebate arrived, it drove straight through that membrane. Oh no, I cannot hold it in. I am about to break through to the golden core. Above Godforging Island, heaven and earth changed color. A massive quantity of spiritual chi, visible to the naked eye, turned into a tide and converged from every direction, looking from a distance like a celestial river hung across the sky. Every scrap of spiritual chi within 100 miles was stirred at once. The rich chi compressed continuously into a mist and formed a giant funnel-shaped vortex that rotated slowly and steadily overhead. It was not only Godforging Island that noticed. The disciples and elders of the northern Dark Holy Land on the surrounding islands all looked up at the same moment, filled with awe and fear together. Such powerful spiritual pressure, one of them hissed. That fluctuation comes from Godforging Island, said another. So could they ever find some divine weapon or immortal pill and set off a celestial resonance? For a magic treasure or a medicinal pill to cause resonance at this level, an older voice said, it would have to be immortal grade at minimum. In this old man's opinion, it looks more like the phenomenon of a cultivator breaking through. Could an elder be undergoing tribulation? Somebody asked. If it were tribulation, another said, world-destroying heavenly lightning would come with it, and right now there is only the phenomenon and no trace of tribulation lightning anywhere. Countless people speculated, and none of them ever got an answer, because an immortal rainbow soon came down out of the sky, and the whole enormous phenomenon vanished. Ha! Yo-Yo was dumbfounded. Her bright eyes were wide open and fixed on me sitting cross-legged with my eyes shut, and her head was buzzing. They had been chatting perfectly well, and it was very nearly time to pay. Then I had simply sat down on the ground with my face flushed and my whole body glowing, while waves of surging aura came off me and forced her back several steps. She looked up at the phenomenon in the sky, then down at me concentrating with my eyes closed. No, she thought, and wondered whether I was trying to default on the payment. To avoid handing over a final installment, he goes so far as to manufacture a commotion at this scale. Who exactly is he performing for? Everybody in the northern region knows young Lord Wang of the Wang family has been plagued by a curse since childhood, and cannot cultivate at all. So what is any of this supposed to be? Very soon, though, she realized something was wrong. That powerful aura was genuinely coming off me and did not stop, and the celestial phenomenon overhead was answering the aura on my body directly. It absolutely was not an illusion generated by some magic treasure or spiritual object, because if it were, it could not have escaped her eyes, and on that point she held absolute confidence. Then a figure appeared in the room, coldly arrogant and stunningly beautiful, domineering and noble, with two completely different auras combined perfectly inside one person. Like an immortal sword forged out of 10,000-year-old profound ice, Disciple greets the Northern Dark Saint Lord, Ha Yo-Yo said, bowing quickly. Na Hyeon-sang glanced at me first, withdrew her gaze and looked at Ha Yo-Yo instead. After a moment's thought, she flicked her sleeve lightly, and Ha Yo-Yo felt her vision blur, and when she looked up again, she stood among towering cliffs with a vast endless ocean below her. Overhead, the phenomenon remained, the funnel of spiritual mist growing steadily more condensed as it turned. I sat not far off with my eyes still closed, and Na Hyun-sang stood beside me watching with a mix of emotion and relief in her face. Northern Dark Saint Lord, Ha Yo-Yo said. By then she had realized she had stepped into Na Hyun-sang's heavenly Dao domain. I hope, Na Hyun-sang said, that you can keep the matter of Moore being able to cultivate a secret. Ha Yo-Yo, a little nervous, nodded. As the only true inheritor of Elder Heavenly Craft, this was hardly her first time meeting the Saint Lord, and the current situation was plainly different from ordinary occasions. Understood, she said, raising a hand quickly, and promised that this disciple would keep it absolutely confidential. Na Hyeon-sang nodded. The girl was the sole true inheritor of Elder Heavenly Craft. Even for the sake of his face, Na Hyun-sang could not force her to swear a heart demon blood oath the way she had with Lee Wanhwa. In her view, the fact that her son could cultivate would not stay hidden forever anyway, and outsiders would find out sooner or later. Even then, it was not an enormous problem, and at worst, she would assign more powerful people to protect him. She stopped looking at Ha Yo-Yo and turned her gaze back to me, and Ha Yo-Yo followed it without thinking. She immediately noticed that at some point, a large volume of profound light, red and blue and green and purple together, had come out of my body. Dense ancient characters followed it into the void realm, and those characters were cultivation techniques and scriptures. The wood origin art, the water origin art, and the earth origin art, one after another. Ha Yo-Yo's eyes widened because she recognized every one of them, and none of them were advanced. They ran only slightly above the basic techniques a person can buy on any street. How could this be? Wang Mok is the young lord of the Wang family and the only offspring of the Northern Dark Saint Lord. So how is he cultivating techniques that low level? And one of them was not enough for him. Apparently, since he is cultivating this many at once, what is the point of that? Does practicing one more technique double a person's magic power somehow? That is impossible. A cultivator's ceiling sits where it sits, and carrying one more type of elemental magic power inside the body means the original total has to drop somewhat to make room. Cultivating 5 separate manuals wastes an enormous amount of energy and delivers nothing else. If he were some loose cultivator from outside, entirely ignorant of cultivation common sense, making that mistake at the very start would at least be understandable. But the young lord of the Wang family, the longer she watched, the stranger it got. She felt I was full of secrets, wrapped up in a mist she could not see through at all. Then she noticed something else was wrong. More and more light came pouring out of me, and every aura in it ran distinctly different and clearly belonged to a different technique. The withered origin art and the raging thunder charm came out of me, and the profound gold technique behind them. Then the Jade Maiden technique, and the Rakshasa technique after that. The number kept climbing until there were tens of thousands of them, and the true essence of most of those auras stood fully displayed, which is what happens when a man has comprehended a technique to its perfection limit. I really should not have stayed up all night refining, she said. I am hallucinating. Her face was full of open disbelief, and her lips had parted slightly, and the dazed expression on her was frankly a little cute. How does one person find the energy to cultivate and comprehend that many techniques? Even a saint-level figure of a holy land, however much of a genius, has limited energy. Even if those techniques ran low-grade, at that quantity it should take at least 100 years to comprehend all of them to perfection. The whole thing defied common sense. On top of that, not every technique can be learned alongside every other, and a great many of them are openly mutually exclusive and can inflict irreparable damage on a cultivator's Tao foundation. That is the simplest common sense there is, and on me it appeared not to exist. Then vast magic power surged out of my body, and the fluctuation shot straight into the sky and shook the enormous funnel of spiritual mist violently. Ha Yo-Yo's eyes went wide all over again. Is this, she said, swearing outright, the pure magic power a foundation establishment cultivator is supposed to possess? Her understanding of the world had been overturned a second time, and Na Hyeon-sang looked over at once. Ha Yo-Yo covered her mouth quickly and told the Saint Lord she had not been cursing him. Na Hyun-sung did not speak and drew her gaze back. On the surface she looked calm, and inside her the shock ran no smaller than Ha Yo-Yo's. Ever since she learned I could cultivate, she had returned to the Holy Land and started arranging every stage in my cultivation to come. Which technique I should cultivate, which spiritual items to use during foundation establishment, which spirit medicine to bathe in daily for 2 years, how to condense a golden core which heaven and earth treasure should assist it, and then to sense soul transformation and tribulation after that. She wanted to give me the best of every single thing, and she had been working herself into the ground over it daily. She thought of countless plans, and rejected every one of them for not being good enough, and the matter had to stay secret so she could not gather a group of Holy Land elders to deliberate it with her. She contacted Wang Hyo, the human butcher, stationed with the Great Shai Immortal Dynasty army far beyond the North Sea, and the two of them discussed it as a couple. Even with 2 Earth Immortals deliberating together, they now felt their knowledge reserves were insufficient. What she genuinely had not expected was this. Before her plan was even finished, I had already reached foundation establishment perfection and began forming my golden core. The speed of it was simply too fast. Beyond that, even with her experience and her discernment, she could not fully tell what path I was cultivating. She had never seen me practice the Wang family's inherited 9-dragon immortal scripture. She had never seen a trace of the Northern Dark Sword canon she taught me herself. And yet by cultivating a batch of completely unpresentable techniques, I had accumulated a foundation this terrifying. Why did she have the feeling that her precious son and she were not walking the same immortal Tao at all? No matter how she looked at it, this was not a small matter. Her son was carrying a great secret. If it ever spread, it would be enough to make Earth Immortals covet him, and existence is stronger than that. Na Hyun-sang frowned slightly and looked at Ha Yo-Yo standing in the distance, apparently deep in thought. Ha Yo-Yo's heart tightened, and her sixth sense began issuing warnings. She swallowed and told the Saint Lord not to worry. I will never reveal a single word about anything that happened today, she said, and I keep my word. Otherwise, let my master beat me to death. Seeing her declare her position voluntarily, Na Hyun-sang considered it for a long while. You are the designated successor of Elder Heavenly Craft, she said. I trust you, so do not disappoint me. Otherwise, even if I take no action, your master cannot carry the consequences. Those words meant she was still willing to give the man some face. Ha Yo-Yo nodded repeatedly and suddenly noticed her clothes had gotten heavy at some point. She looked down and found her whole body covered in cold sweat. The Saint Lord's pressure was simply too terrifying. At that exact moment, my magical power condensed hard inside me and compressed frantically 3 feet above my head, glowing intensely as it gradually formed a perfect sphere. Once the golden core took shape, heaven and earth changed dramatically. The funnel of spiritual mist above deformed all at once and turned into a sky-reaching waterfall that came rushing down. The sea churned and the sky darkened. My body glowed dazzlingly, flickering on and off, with chaos chi coiling around me. Under the impact of that terrifying waterfall of spiritual chi, my golden core trembled slightly, and then stabilized. Streaks of light kept flashing across it like an invisible giant mouth greedily devouring the spiritual chi and energy of the world. Tiny patterns began surfacing across the core. Both of them watched with total seriousness. Because those tiny patterns are called core patterns. Each core pattern represents 1 grade. The more of them, the higher the grade of the golden core, and the grade governs a cultivator's future potential. This man condensing a golden core caused a phenomenon this terrifying, Ha Yo-Yo thought. It is probably at least 7th grade. She holds the 100 refinement profound body and is exceptionally gifted, and she achieved a 6th grade golden core in her own time, which made her famous for a stretch. With Elder Heavenly Craft's careful guidance, stepping into soul transformation eventually was close to certain for her. If the right opportunity arrived, it was not impossible she would break through into tribulation before her 3,000-year lifespan ran out. Between golden core grades, each single grade is a chasm. That runs especially true from the middle 3 grades into the upper 3. Even the successive Saint Lords of the Holy Land could not all achieve 8 or 9 grade cores, and 7 grade cores growing into Saint Lords are common enough. So guessing that I might condense a 7th grade core was already a bold guess on her part. The facts proved her perspective was still far too limited. In what was very nearly the blink of an eye, 6 core patterns condensed at once as though all of them had appeared simultaneously, and it made her shiver from head to foot. Then, with hardly a pause, the 7th arrived, and then the 8th, then the 9th. All of it in one run, without stagnation and without difficulty, and both of them were left dumbfounded. In the past, it took Na Hyun-sang a full month to condense her 9th grade anomalous golden core, sword severing the 9 heavens. 20 days of that month went into the 8th and 9th patterns alone. That process is incredibly difficult and demands pushing a foundation to its absolute limit. I took a few breaths. To what extent had my foundation and accumulation actually reached? At that same moment, both of them realized a 9th grade golden core was definitely not my ceiling. They were correct. because not long after, a new core pattern surfaced faintly on the core. 10th grade, Ha Yo-Yo said, almost losing her voice, and insisted that it really was 10th grade. She looked at me as though I were a monster. Who would have thought that the young lord of the Wang family, dismissed universally as a dissolute young master incapable of cultivating anything, actually carried talent to a terrifying degree? A 10th grade golden core surpasses the limit outright. How many years has it been since the entire northern region saw one? Then she shivered as a biting coldness closed around her. She looked up and met Na Hyun-sang's deep gaze, and with that single look she understood exactly what the woman was thinking. She raised a hand fast. "I can make a heart demon blood oath," she said. "If I reveal any detail of the young lord's cultivation, my own cultivation will not advance an inch for the rest of this life." Her will to survive stood at its absolute peak, and she swore the oath on the spot. Only then did the coldness in Na Hyun-sang's eyes gradually dissipate. There was no other way to handle it. A 10th grade golden core carries no ordinary significance. Once news like that spreads, the other 2 great holy lands of the northern region would stop sleeping soundly and start dreaming up ways to deal with me. At that point, Elder Heavenly Craft's face could no longer protect his disciple. If she had refused to swear, Na Hyun-sang would have had to use other methods to reassure herself, and Ha Yo-Yo would not have had an easy time of it. Not long after the oath, however, the 11th core pattern surfaced faintly on my golden core. Both of them fell silent. There was numbness in it, and daze and more than either, a plain disbelief in this world. "How about," Ha Yo-Yo said, "you simply erase this memory from me?" She regretted the entire business bitterly. What kind of situation was this supposed to be? If she had known it would go this way, she would have handed another disciple the job of dealing with me and let them collect the payment or fail to collect it. Either outcome would have been 10,000 times easier than standing here. A female sword immortal who has shaken the entire northern territory might draw at any moment. Whoever tries that pressure will understand it. Before her voice had even finished, the 12th core pattern appeared. At the same moment, the spiritual chi between heaven and earth turned restless and chaotic. Above the 9 heavens, every trace of light vanished and left nothing but pitch-black darkness. Endless chaos revealed itself, like the void realm out of time immemorial, or the chaotic age before heaven and earth were ever formed. Vast and boundless, with countless living beings apparently being annihilated inside it. Then a brilliant light appeared like the edge of a sharp axe, severing the endless black mist and tearing the rolling chaos apart. Out of that destruction, countless stars and galaxies and realms and deities were born. A 12th grade anomalous golden core. Chaos opening the heavens. The anomaly arrived fast and disappeared just as fast, and the scene around them returned to what it had been. "My son, Wang Mok, genuinely has the makings of a great emperor," Na Hyun-sang said. She took a deep breath as she came out of a shock she could not describe, her heart filling with pride and glory. Then her gaze settled faintly on Ha Yo-Yo. At that point, Ha Yo-Yo did not beg for her life the way she had before. She shook her head, laughed, and simply sat down flat on the ground. "Let the whole thing be destroyed," she said, "because I am tired. This damned world is genuinely ridiculous. A 12th grade golden core, unprecedented since time immemorial, and an anomalous one on top of that. How could she possibly have walked into this, and she had given up struggling entirely?" From Na Hyun-sang's position, there were 10,000 reasons to kill her. What blood oath, and what memory erasure? The various holy lands hold methods for this. As long as a person's divine soul is not destroyed thoroughly enough to keep them out of reincarnation entirely, there is always a way to pull the information out of them. There is genuinely no need to doubt any of that. A 12th grade anomalous golden core is absolutely worth every holy land sparing no cost. And face is the least valuable thing on the table in a situation like that. Once I grew up, the whole world would have to bow, and even a holy land would be no different from pigs and dogs. When I opened my eyes, I found myself still in Ha Yo-Yo's forging room, with Na Hyun-sang standing beside me. I asked my mother why she was there. I had been buried in the insights of the Golden Core breakthrough and was entirely unaware of anything that had happened outside my own head. "You still have the nerve to ask," she said, rolling her eyes at me, slightly reproachful and considerably more affectionate than reproachful. "You child," she said. "A matter as important as a breakthrough, and you did not tell your mother in advance, so I could have prepared a secret chamber for you." I scratched the back of my head and admitted I do not have much experience with it. I have always simply broken through whenever and wherever it happened before. I did not expect this time to be different. Ha Yo-Yo said nothing at all. "Senior Sister Yo-Yo," I said, looking at her curiously. "What is wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like a resentful woman?" She had changed a great deal in a very short time, and the way she looked at me now was strange, packed with complicated and intense resentment. "It is nothing," she said, glancing at Na Hyun-sang and looking away fast. Na Hyun-sang had not killed her, and had not let her walk away clean either. Instead, she left a special restriction inside the girl's divine soul. The moment Ha Yo-Yo so much as formed the intention of leaking the news that I had condensed a 12th grade anomalous golden core, her divine soul would be destroyed instantly. She would perish thoroughly enough that not even fragments would remain. You have just completed a breakthrough, my mother said. You need to stabilize the realm properly, so come and sit with mother. No, I said, next time. I still have to go back and handle important business. I touched the spatial ring, holding a million communication talismans as I said it. Nothing is more important than your health, she said, and her expression went serious. Be obedient. All right then, I said. There is nothing to be done about my mother, so I went back with her obediently and stayed in the Saint Lord's private palace for 2 days. At the same time, I sent word to Seo Zhangzhang asking her to come over and take the communication talismans back to the Nangya Merchant Guild so we could start selling. I ran through every key detail with her. Before selling anything, I said, you must first distribute those signal stations. That is, the formation plates. According to the marks on the planning map, the first batch of 128 stations has to be implemented perfectly, and not one of them can sit off position. And then, I said, our communication talismans are priced far above anything on the market, so a great many cultivators will be scared straight off. Which means we need to plant a group of enthusiastic voices in the crowd first. Did you write all of that down? I asked. I have remembered it, she said, holding a voice recording talisman and wearing an extremely serious face. Good, I told her. Go and do it. Na Hyun-sung watched from the side with real interest while I directed operations at length, and her eyes filled with love and admiration for her precious son. My son is so handsome, she thought sincerely. What is it, mother? I said, touching my own face in confusion. Why are you looking at me like that, and is there something on my face? You have the bearing of a great emperor, she said solemnly. I told my mother I had asked her not to say that. It is the truth, is it not? She said matter-of-factly, her whole face full of pride. Even those true disciples and saints the various holy lands are so proud of, or those so-called godchildren of the ancient clans, are not worth mentioning in front of my son. I could not laugh and could not cry. If I genuinely become the #1 spendthrift in the Northern Territory, I told my mother, the responsibility for it will be unshirkably yours. So what, she said, resting her chin on one hand, not ashamed in the slightest, and closer to proud. If I do not spoil my own son, who exactly is going to? A few days later, outside every Nanya Merchant Guild branch across the entire North Sea region, one sign went up in unison: new product launch. The reputation of the Nanya Merchant Guild was very nearly overflowing at that point, so any move it made was going to be exceptionally eye-catching. At the Nanya branch in the Chang'an archipelago, countless cultivators gathered at the door. Jang Hyun was a small cultivator at the Qi condensation stage who had joined a small sect, and by a stroke of luck he had obtained a remnant manual of talisman arts. After struggling, he had become a reasonably well-known first-ranked talisman master in the area, and his net worth ran considerably above the vast majority of loose cultivators. He stood in the crowd listening to the shopkeeper inside speaking at length. Everyone, the shopkeeper announced, today our merchant guild launches a new product. It is a new generation of communication talisman, never seen before. Researched and improved by hundreds of great masters of artifact refining from the Northern Dark Holy Lands Artifact Refining Pavilion. The crowd went slightly quiet at that. With a prefix that long, one of them said it got me completely fired up. I thought they were releasing something incredible, and it turns out to be a communication talisman. Boring, said another, and asked what there was to brag about with a communication talisman that has exactly one use. These business people never lose the habit of bragging, a third said. Let us disperse. Jang Hyun scoffed too, shook his head, and prepared to leave without any particular interest. Then a conversation between two cultivators nearby stopped him where he stood. I heard a long time ago that the Nongya Merchant Guild and the Northern Dark Holy Land were teaming up to launch a revolutionary communication talisman, one of them said. I have finally waited it out. I heard this batch comes in 4 styles, said the other. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. Each style has different grades, and every single one is incredibly good looking. Not just good looking, a third put in. I heard the material texture was meticulously selected, with the main body crafted from deep-sea profound gold and snowy mountain ice crystals. The quality is excellent and the feel of it in your hand is simply incredible. I heard, said a fourth, that when you use one of these to contact a fellow Taoist, it can trigger an anomaly and summon a divine beast to protect you. Just thinking about that scene gets me excited. I cannot wait to switch, said another. The communication talismans I bought before were ugly and rustic and hard to use. As contemporary cultivators of our generation, we ought to treat ourselves better. Jang Hyun listened from the side and started feeling dazed. Fellow Taoists, he said, you keep saying you heard this and you heard that. Where exactly did you hear all of it? How is it that I have never heard any of this? The people who had been chatting so happily gave him a wary look and told him it was none of his business and that they had simply heard it. Jang Hyun had nothing to say to that. Situations exactly like that one were happening at every Nanya branch location. Most people held no strong interest in a new type of communication talisman. For some reason, though, there were always a few mysterious cultivators nearby with extensive information sources. They discussed the miraculous features of the new talisman, praised it to the heavens, and hoped everybody's curiosity along the way. Is it genuinely that mystical? Jang Hyun thought. Full of doubt, he decided not to leave immediately and stopped to watch instead. The branch shopkeeper was still working through polite formalities while keeping an eye on the crowd around him. Not until more and more cultivators had gathered and the numbers reached the scale headquarters had anticipated, did he very solemnly produce a metal box decorated to an extreme degree of luxury. He opened it, and with both hands lifted out a communication talisman about the size of a palm. The design was distinctive, bronze in color, with a lifelike white tiger carved across the back that looked exceptionally domineering. This, the shopkeeper said, is our Starlight communication talisman, and everyone should please take a look. What exquisite carving, somebody said, because one look tells you it is a master's work. This is interesting, said another. This is a communication talisman, said a third. It looks like an ancient treasure out of some ruin, and it is very eye-catching. Sure enough, the moment the Starlight White Tiger appeared, the eyes of a great many cultivators lit up. One has to remember that the communication talismans they used daily were finger-length pieces of jade with runes cut into them, and against that the difference in appearance was immeasurable. There were calmer voices in the crowd as well. It seems it is only better looking than other communication talismans, one of them said. The key thing is that a communication talisman wears its runes away after a few uses, and has to be replaced, so making it look this good is not very useful, is it? Communication talismans are consumable. They last only a few uses longer than the paper ones. Good question, the shopkeeper said, all smiles. Dear customers, that brings me to the second feature of our communication talisman, which is its ultra-long battery life. Everyone, please look. Battery life. It was the first time anybody present had heard the term, and after a moment's thought the meaning was not hard to work out. The shopkeeper turned the talisman to show the side carved with the white tiger, then took out a mid-grade spirit stone and held it in front of the tiger's open mouth. A light rose. A vortex formed in the tiger's mouth and swallowed the spirit stone, and the luster across its body deepened and grew more lifelike. Looks of open wonder went around the crowd. Our new communication talisman, the shopkeeper said, can continuously replenish its energy by devouring spirit stones. 20 low-grade spirit stones support 2,000 uses. Theoretically, once you buy ours and take it home, you will never need to buy another communication talisman again. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. In other words, this was no longer a consumable at all, but a magic treasure a person could hold and keep using. And once the energy ran down, you simply topped it up. Normal communication talismans on the market cost 20 spirit stones each and give you 1,000 uses. One of them calculated aloud. Used frequently, they are gone in 2 or 3 months. Calculating it that way, said another, this one looks more cost-effective. For the same money you get twice the uses. That is true, a third said, but look at the materials and the craftsmanship on that thing. It obviously will not be cheap, but you never have to replace it, said a fourth. Buy one and use it a lifetime. As long as the price is not outrageous, I think that is acceptable. A great many cultivators started taking real interest, and the light in their eyes kept brightening. One of them called out to the shopkeeper to stop keeping them in suspense. How many spirit stones, and what exactly is the price? Another one demanded. Everyone, do not be in a hurry, the shopkeeper said, smiling broadly. I have not finished introducing it yet, and what I am about to say next is the most important part of all. There is more, somebody said. Everyone, look, the shopkeeper said. In front of all of them, he injected a wisp of spiritual energy, the white tiger communication talisman. The whole talisman lit up with a brilliant, dazzling glow, and that white tiger appeared to come alive, forming a colorful spiritual body, majestic and powerful, floating above the shopkeeper's head. At first glance, it looked exactly as though the man had performed some secret technique and summoned an ancient divine beast, and it was domineering and cool to the absolute extreme. The eyes of a considerable number of male cultivators present went completely straight. It can do that, somebody said, genuinely astonished. My God, said another, I could resist everything up until now, and I cannot resist this. So handsome, said a third, and far too handsome for anybody's good. The cultivators began boiling with excitement and cheering, and the scene turned incredibly heated. Then a voice fell across it like cold water. Is that not simply a little trick playing with light and shadow? The voice said. It is not a real divine beast's soul. Everyone turned to look and found 3 people standing side by side in luxurious robes, with the man in the middle wearing open disdain, since the remark had obviously come from him. Manager Moke of the Nanya branch squinted and let his smile deepen. So it is Manager Chu, Manager Song, and Manager Lee, he said. The three of them ran the branches of the other three great merchant guilds on the island, and with Nanya making a commotion this large today, they were naturally not going to miss it. The three of you have arrived at the perfect moment, Manager Moke said, smiling at them. Why not do me a favor? What favor? Manager Song of the Bongne branch asked, frowning. Simple, Manager Mock said. Give me a wisp of your aura so I can demonstrate what this communication talisman does when it contacts somebody. Manager Song's mouth twitched, because this was using him as free labor, and he was naturally unwilling. With countless people watching, though, appearing stingy and narrow-minded would not do him any favors, so he could only answer that it was hardly difficult and wave a wisp of aura across. Manager Mock caught it and injected it into the talisman. Then everyone watched a line of text appear in the interface floating out of the white tiger, saying the contact had been added successfully and asking for a note. With a thought from Manager Mock, the words Bongne Manager Song formed slowly, and then he raised his hand and tapped the empty air. That white tiger let out an immediate roar and went running through the void realm. In a flash, it appeared above Manager Song's head like a fierce tiger coming down a mountain. It gave a long roar that frightened him badly enough to send him stumbling several steps backward, very nearly onto the ground. Manager Song looked up. The white tiger raised its massive claw. Ripples opened in the void realm in front of it, and an image appeared inside them, showing the beaming face of Manager Mock. Manager Song, he said, it is only light and shadow. Look how frightened you are. Manager Song's face went green. Retaliation, and this was absolutely retaliation. It has to be said that the craftsmanship of the artifact refining pavilion is genuinely world-class. That white tiger was a phantom, and it was complete in both form and spirit, full of charm and very nearly indistinguishable from the real animal. Even knowing perfectly well that it was fake, Manager Song could still feel the thick sense of power coming off it. He could not stop himself getting nervous and feeling as though a mere communication talisman were suppressing him. He bit his lip, unable to produce a single word, gave a cold snort, and waved a hand to disperse the image in front of him. That counted as cutting off the communication. The principle of a communication talisman in the cultivation world differs from a telephone in my previous world, since it does not require both parties to hold a device. As long as a wisp of aura has been recorded, the target of the information can be located inside the corresponding range, and the information itself usually travels one of two ways. One is real-time communication, exactly as it had just run. The other resembles a written message, where content is packaged and the recipient understands it with a sweep of divine sense. There are only so many ways people ever need to exchange information. There is nothing new under the sun. Whatever world a man stands in, things develop into similar shapes eventually, and perhaps that is simply different roads arriving at the same destination. This is too cool, somebody in the crowd said. Another one told her husband she wanted this one, and asked for more allowance this month. Too powerful, said a third, because I genuinely cannot resist this. What about the price, manager? One of them called. Stop keeping us in suspense. Tell us the price and let me give up on it. Give up on what? Said another. Because I will buy it even if my cultivation stays stagnant for a year. At worst, I stop eating medicinal pills. In this day and age, who does not have a few close friends? They cannot even bring themselves to imagine the process waiting after they bought one of these. Sending a white tiger straight at somebody, watching them tremble, then go shocked, then grind their teeth in envy and beat their chest in frustration. How satisfying would that be? Satisfying enough to make a man's scalp tingle. The atmosphere had heated all the way through, and basically every face there was flushed with excitement. Manager Mock was very excited himself. The requirements from above ran strict though, and the process could not be allowed to go wrong, so he still did not announce a price and displayed the other styles one at a time instead. First came the Azure Dragon, flamboyant and free-spirited, its whole body throwing off lightning, majestic and full of fighting spirit. Then the Vermilion Bird, bright as fire and delicate as a flower, enchanting and beautiful, like a phoenix out of the 9 heavens, which captured the hearts of a great many female cultivators on the spot. So beautiful, one of them said. I want that one, husband, so buy it for me. Her husband asked whether they genuinely had to decide this quickly. Is that not a bit hasty? Quick, she said, and asked whether anything in this world could possibly be quicker than he was. I have not even started complaining about you yet, she added. If you do not buy it for me, I will go and find my childhood friend, that senior brother of mine. Do not, he said. I will buy it, and I will definitely buy it. Finally came the Black Tortoise. It was neither as flamboyant nor as enchanting as the first three. It was peerlessly heavy and filled with an ancient sense of majesty, as though it had existed that way since the beginning of time, and it made people feel trust and respect without deciding to. That model satisfied a great many cultivators who were hundreds of years old, or in high positions, or whose blood had mostly cooled. Every style had its own audience, and every one came in different ranks with widely different materials. Starlight used deep sea profound gold, mixed with some crushed fine gold. Bright Moon used 9 refined dark steel forged from a blend of 6 rare metals extraordinarily hard with strong magic power transmission. Blazing Sun added star sand on top of the Bright Moon base, an extremely rare material where even a small amount raises the power of a magic treasure during refining. That showed in the appearance because the blazing sun gives off a brilliant golden glow as piercing as the sun itself. That light is not spiritual energy operating but the material emitting on its own. As for the highest universal grade, the crowd was not permitted to see it at all. The cultivators there were incredibly excited. Honestly, the starlight was already very good, and on its own would have satisfied everybody. Set beside the other grades, it was instantly overshadowed. The scene was already exploding when Manager Mock unhurriedly took out a crystal ball. A wisp of spiritual energy went in, and an enormous light screen generated instantly and displayed itself in front of everyone. Starlight carried a uniform price of 188 low-grade spirit stones, and Bright Moon a uniform 1,888. Blazing Sun came in at 18,888, and the Universal at 108,888. Somebody swore aloud at how expensive that was. I guessed it would not be cheap, said another, and I still did not expect this. Actually, it is all right, a third said. It is something you can use for a lifetime and I think it is worth it. Less than 200 spirit stones. I can scrape that together if I grit my teeth. Exactly, said another. For that one moment when the white tiger flies into somebody else's face, I think it is worth this much. I wanted a blazing sun, said the next. And now it looks like even a bright moon is a stretch. Bright Moon is already very good, somebody answered. And unlike him, I am dirt poor, he said. And I am still short a few spirit stones for the starlight. Let us not even think about the ones above that, said another. Look at those prices, and they are completely out of our league. Listening to the crowd, Manager Mock felt a deep and genuine admiration arriving. The whole introduction process and the script for it had been sent down from headquarters with instructions to follow it strictly. He had held doubts at first. If the communication talismans were sold at prices like these, surely those cultivators would simply run the moment the number landed. Where would they find the patience to sit through the rest of the introduction? The script, though, specifically told him to introduce every highlight first and mention the price only at the very end. It genuinely worked. The prices on these talismans ran 10 times, in some cases 100 times, above anything on the market. And now that these cultivators had seen the goods, they felt those numbers were normal and acceptable. Exactly which genius thought of this? He pushed the stray thoughts down and announced loudly that the sale had begun. The cultivators in the area went completely crazy and surged forward like a tide, afraid of being too late and finding the stock gone. Give me a Starlight Azure Dragon, one of them shouted, and another called for 2 of them, 1 white tiger and 1 vermilion bird. A third said he would take 5 outright. A fourth announced that this seat wanted a bright moon, and somebody behind him called for a bright moon black tortoise. Do not push, Manager Mock shouted hurriedly, startled by the crazed look on all of them. Take it slow, and line up, one at a time. Then he sank into a state that was painful and happy at once. This young master wants a blazing sun, a proud voice announced suddenly, and the scene quieted slightly. The crowd looked over and found a youth in luxurious robes parting them with his head held high and his chest out, a folding fan in one hand. Is that the young master of the Seok family, Seok Ilmyong? Somebody said. That is a major clan with an ascent-soul-old ancestor guarding it, said another. They are never short of money. I heard he invested in the Bongne Cloud Sea Foundation a while back, said a third, and ended up getting beaten by disaster victims. It looks like his injuries have healed. Seok Ilmyong's mouth twitched slightly as he pretended not to hear any of the whispering behind him. His whole body still throbbed with the lingering pain of it at intervals. And by now he had developed an allergy to the words Bongne Cloud Sea and could not stand hearing them at all. Today you would wash away that shame and show off, or rather, make a splash. A blazing sun communication talisman, Manager Mock said. Which style would you like, young Master Soak? Azure Dragon, he said. Coming right up, Manager Moak said, smiling, and produced a talisman in even more luxurious packaging and handed it across. Seok Ilmyong opened the box in front of countless people and lifted it out. It was a brilliant golden communication talisman that shone in the sunlight like an ancient divine weapon, giving off an awe-inspiring air of nobility. As he dripped a drop of blood onto it to claim ownership, an azure dragon flew out with its body wreathed in lightning, and it was an astonishing sight. Unlike the starlight versions that hover above the head, this one manifested a full spiritual body and coiled itself around him like a pet beast. The place fell silent. Is that genuinely a blazing sun communication talisman? And is the phenomenon on it not far too realistic? Seok Ilmyong was stunned himself. He reached out tentatively, and the azure dragon stretched its head over on its own and nuzzled his hand. There was no genuine physical sensation in it, and there was a trace of scorching heat, exactly like the breath of a real azure dragon.